You kind of don't even learn what it is that they're all referring to, which is this guy's revelation in a temple in Egypt that he needed to impregnate 2 women, his wife and a woman he had just met on Raya.
Not the Burning Man RV Poly DTR. He's literally giving return missionary at BYU who's like,
Spirit told me to marry you.
Literally.
Even teachers at BYU Idaho had the wherewithal to tell men to stop doing that. Yeah. You guys need to learn how to talk about your lives and what you want apart from the symbols. You're lost in the source. You're just in a throuple, guys. You are at the end of the day just a throuple.
Yeah.
If you like watching metaphor get abused to high heavens, you're going to love this video.
If you love
mythology as a weapon.
Ooh.
Symbolism as a tool to bludgeon others' personal desires with.
Okay, you're speaking my language. Sign me up.
It's going to be kinky.
Wow. Well, I'm wearing my poly-friendly mesh fingerless gloves, so generally just signaling safe LA polyam.
If you don't know who we are, I'm Sam.
I'm Tanner.
And we make videos on this channel. We talk a lot about Mormonism, which obviously has a polygamous founder, Joseph Smith. But we dissect a lot of kind of spiritually problematic worldviews and ideas. And it's rare that something feels so right up our alley as this does, in that we are both polyamory friendly. Like we got nothing against thruples. We are thruple friendly on this channel.
Oh, a triangle, the perfect shape.
Yeah, we've always said that. But this video is such a rich text. I've given it one brief watch with a lot of skipping to just try and, I took it down from, it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, this podcast. Wow. By the way, have genuinely never seen 4 people as verbose as these 4 in this podcast. And like, listen, we get it, but every single point they make has like a giant on-ramp of just kind of like saying that, like, there's so much caveating and there's so much verbosity. That's the only way I can say it.
Well, as a yapper who loves to gab and who loves word salad and gobbledygook,
yeah,
I can't wait. I'm so excited. This is like a Nightmare Blunt situation where
1000%.
You like meet a couple at a bar and they're like, you should come back to our bungalow, and you're like, okay, like game night and
initiation ceremony into the throuple.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, actually, we are doing a sacrifice to the god Horus.
Condensed this 2 hour 20-minute podcast, I think, down to 35 minutes. Tanner hasn't seen this. You saw a little glimpse, but basically you're kind of going in blind.
Yeah.
The general gist, for those of you who don't know, Aubrey Marcus is this essentially like spiritual podcasting bro. It seems like he's helped a lot of people embrace psychedelics, like he's very psychedelic friendly. But you know when people are like very, very into psychedelics and you're like,
You're like, I thought this was going to be game night, but now we're doing ayahuasca.
It's like we are literally doing a hero's dose on a Tuesday night at game night. Yeah. Anyway, we'll just get into it. You don't need any more waffle from us. You're going to get a lot of that from them.
I said, want to explore my hole, and he thought I meant K-hole.
I think ketamine does come into this.
Of course it does. I knew it would.
Oh, okay. Let's just start, and we'll react to it as we go.
He's kind of... I think of him as being in the manosphere, as Joe Rogan.
I think he's
Huberman.
worked with Joe Rogan. Yeah,
I think, yeah.
And very much in the manosphere in the sense that, like Andrew Huberman, there's something about these guys. They really want to impregnate multiple women. The old sort of dream of the,
the oldest dick-having dream in the book.
I know, but I just thought the like new patriarchal dream was like you're secretly having sex with other women, or you are having sex with other women, but you've just got like one baby mama. Because they really shit on women that have multiple... This is all getting too personal. We need to get into the video.
Okay.
I've needed you to see this ever since I encountered it 24 hours ago.
Well, I've been looking for a new polycule to walk up to, so I'm considering this an audition.
If you like emotional processing, there's excessive emotional processing in polyamory, and then there's whatever this is. Let's get into it.
Buckle your seatbelts, everyone, because this is going to be a podcast that is going to be shocking for some of y'all. It's going to be stimulating for many of y'all. It's going to raise a lot of questions. And the reason is that I am here with my beloved wife, Ilana, which many of you who follow me on social media or have listened to our podcasts have met and love. And we're also here with beloved Ilana, who is a part of our relationship constellation and shares a deep love with both myself and Ilana in their own unique qualities. And we're also here with my beloved and esteemed teacher, Rebbe, Dr. Mark Gaffney, who's helped us navigate what this all means.
We're going to get to Dr. Mark Gaffney.
Is this a
Gaffney?
group that needs therapy and they're
This
just going
is
to be
a
putting
group
it
that
out there
needs
on the internet?
individual therapy and is instead under the spiritual tutelage of Dr. Mark Gaffney. We'll
I
get
forgot
into
about that little bit.
Yeah, I think that's in a few. I have a little bit thing to show you about that. But basically, this guy, Mark Gaffney, is essentially just there to co-sign on Aubrey Marcus's narrative and to tell these women why every effort they make to submit to it is like this guy has I think, theology or philosophy degree from Oxford. Like, he's got a lot of qualifications. He's written books. He talks intelligently. A lot of the stuff he says we would agree with, but he is using it for evil. He is like a Keith Raniere type. You'll see it right away when we get to him, but...
And the reality is that we didn't plan to be here. This was not like we set out with this intention. We arrived at this intention through a variety of choices and mystical...
Beginning with me having the revelation and then imposing it on the women. They never do start with that in mind, do they?
No.
mystical interventions and just the acceptance of what is. And what is has really guided us to where we are now. And where we are now is a story that we have not yet told. And so here we are to tell the story and also tell the story in the context of a world, a planet that's...
I know this is giant hypocrisy and it's just me hating the reflection I see in the mirror.
No.
But I
Don't
don't
say that
believe
about my best friend.
influencers should be allowed.
No. Not like
You know,
this. Spiritual influences, especially concerning.
I'm concerned with all of us. I think we all need to chill out.
Take a long,
bit.
hard look at ourselves.
Yeah.
really, as you would say,
Yeah.
Rebbe, drenched in shame.
I mean, maybe that's, there's going to be so much to hear from you, Aubrey, and from Vailan and from Alana. So maybe we'll just kind of just set the frame and then, away we go.
Let's set the frame, Dr. Mark Gaffney. I just thought it was interesting as well. They're immediately talking about unshaming, which is obviously such a key thing we talk about. Again, using it for evil, I swear. Here's a little intro to who Dr. Mark Gaffney is.
Oh, he's now joined by television star Dr. Phil. This is so exciting.
We don't normally stand Dr. Phil, but you gotta hand it to him in this. He hands it to Mark, and I appreciate that about Dr. Phil.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. If Dr. Phil is calling you out,
Yeah.
what does that say?
Dr. Phil annihilated him in this 45-minute Dr. Phil episode.
Dr. Phil.
We actually have historical beef with Dr. Phil because we were once on a Dr. Phil subsidiary show that was...
I thought it was really good. Why do we have beef?
Didn't Dr. Phil recently go on an ice raid, or was that Dr. Oz?
Oh, geez.
Let's actually double check
that was
that.
Oz.
Hang on.
I've never looked at Dr. Phil and been like, that's a legitimate doctor doing legitimate
Yeah,
work.
it is Dr. Phil who went along on ice raids recently for some reason. Also, I mean, he's just peddled a ton of pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And is he a doctor?
Psh, he probably got a degree.
He lost his license. Oh, wait. He lost his license after 2 complaints of misconduct, including sexual advances towards one of his patients. You seriously cannot get a fucking doctor that doesn't make sexual advances on their patients. These people all clearly are very into Jungian
Of course.
stuff. Which also, again, I feel like makes us the perfect people to respond to them, because it's like, in theory, you couldn't have 2 people who are more sympathetic to them, and yet it's just
The expert on being a doctor making sexual advances on your patients.
yeah, and they kind of throw shade at Carl Jung for that in this, but we're going to get into it. Here's who Mark is.
One of the allegations is that you, in the role of a teacher and authority figure, had inappropriate relationships with children.
That's just absolutely not true.
Now, absolutely means complete, total, zero, nothing.
I remove.
But now, that's not what you have said, because there are 2 people that have come forward. Sarah, for example, alleges that you sexually assaulted her when she was 13 and 14 years old,
Right.
when you were 19.
Right.
That is a crime. And she says, Mark Gaffney sexually assaulted me repeatedly when I was 13 and 14 years old over the course of 9 months. I persistently tried to push him away from me. I told him no. I was not able to effectively keep him away from me as he was stronger than me.
Right.
He told me that I must keep what he did to me a secret, and if I told, I would be blamed and shamed by my parents.
Right.
You have said, quote, she was 14 going on 35,
That's a complete distortion. I've said it's a complete distortion about 1,000 times.
and I never forced her.
And I'm
Did you
happy
say
to say
that?
it again. Right? That's completely taken out of context. So let me just say what happened.
Well, did you say that? Did you say she was 14 going on 35 and I never forced her? It was all above the waist.
What you just read from Sarah is absolutely and categorically not true. I was madly in love with Sarah. Right? Sarah wrote me beautiful.
Okay.
It's categorically untrue, and then his defense is, I was madly in love with the 13-year-old.
I thought it was going to be like,
I
I've never
know.
met her before in my life.
I'm like, you signed off on going on Dr. Phil, and that's the narrative you're wanting to present to defend yourself, that you were in love with her? We'll keep going, but yeah, I mean, this is kind of who this guy is.
Sarah wrote me beautiful love letters at the time, right? When we finished our relationship, she wrote me a beautiful love letter, right? Do I think the relationship was a mistake and do I take responsibility for it? I 1,000% do. However, there was never any sense whatsoever, ever, right, at the time, that there was any sense of
There was, you were 19, she was 13.
13, my guy, 13. This wasn't like a, like a 16, 18, like what's the Romeo and Juliet? Like that's a pretty big age gap. Like that's a child and you're a young adult.
We spend most of our time walking through the Met, holding hands.
It's fine because they walked through the Met together.
Oh.
This kind of attitude towards this, you're going to see that come through in the way he approaches this whole thing.
Where I'm from, walking through the Met is a euphemism for marriage, so they're practically wedded.
The only reason you should be walking through the Met with a 13-year-old girl at 19 is if you're doing like a Big Brothers Big Sisters thing. But even then, wouldn't you be the same gender?
While she was playing guitar and just, being in love the way we were.
You just said, I was in love with her. She was a child, Mark. What do you mean you were in love with her? You were a 19-year-old man, and you're saying you were in love with a 13-year-old child? Does that not fit in your ear wrong? That's a felony.
The Dr. Phil music coming in, it's like based. Shouldn't be based, really.
Oh, TV.
Yeah.
So weird.
Also, something to note is that these men talk astronomically more than the women throughout this podcast. This man talks for so much of it, it's like really hard for me. He's there to co-sign on Mark Aubrey's narrative.
He's like, your new 19-year-old bride is totally good because you guys are in love. I had you write love letters to each other, so it will hold up in court that they were in love and no coercion was had.
Yeah, I mean, this younger girl is in her 20s, so like ostensibly this is a situation where 3 consenting adults are consenting. But it's also just like such an interesting situation because there's so many power dynamics at play, and it's kind of a weird one because sometimes there can be manipulation happening that doesn't mean it's not consensual. It's like you can be naive to the fact that someone's being manipulative, but you are still consenting to that treatment, so it's very murky. It's like neither of these women want to be viewed as victims, like obviously.
Sure.
So yeah, just very nuanced, but should we keep watching for now?
We haven't even got to the techno-feudal paganism of it all.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to say about all of this. But this guy, Mark, just the worst. I'm trying to be like, why am I trying to be like friendly to this pedo? I also just want to say, the women do not speak until minute 20 of this podcast. This is a 2 hour, 20 minutes, as I understand it. This guy talks for ages before either of the women ever weigh in. So just know that the women don't even enter the conversation until minute 20 because these bros are just jerking each other off back and forth, spinning. And also, what this guy is also doing in the podcast is he's doing all of this setup so that by the time the women even come in, for them to say anything other than wild agreement with all of this, like they're going to come across as like unenlightened. Let's just get into it.
Wow, this really is an episode of Are the Straights Okay?
Yeah.
Everyone check in on your straight friends. Just, you don't know how they're doing. They could be in the thralls.
They are doing radical monogamy. And it looks exactly like polyamory, but it's different. We'll get into it.
First, I think what Aubrey said was so important, which is we're not here to suggest that there's this new optimal form of relationship which we are proselytizing for.
Isn't that what it says in the thumbnail?
Yeah, they're not, but they do spend the entire podcast episode talking about how enlightened it is. They shit on monogamy a lot. Not us defending monogamy this episode. It's like he's saying, we're not being prescriptive, but like everything they say is very much like, this is a vastly more enlightened way of doing relationships.
Joseph Smith starting Mormonism. Nothing of the kind.
Nothing of the kind except for the multiple wives and
The visions and revelations and latter-day glory.
getting a vision
and
in the temple that you need to...
And the overall kind of vibe of Michael Bellum, Satan, Lucifer.
I know,
He's got
and
that
Keith
hair.
Raniere. He has such Keith Raniere energy to me.
His
And
name's
Keith
Mark.
Raniere said some good stuff.
Sure.
But it's like, in the name of what, you know?
Yeah.
Who was Joseph Smith? Well, did Joseph Smith had a right-hand man that would kind of, I don't know, be almost like co-signing on his narratives? Like, did he have a guy?
Yeah, was his whole thing. He's like, these are my 2 official guys. And
But didn't one
they're-
of his official guys say that his 16-year-old bride was like a dirty, nasty, filthy affair?
Yeah, that was Oliver Cowdery, who felt his guy, he was Joseph's main guy for a minute. And then when Sidney Rigdon came into the show, Sidney Rigdon already had a huge following. He was already a Christfluencer, and he a sinfluencer. And when he kind of came to Joseph, he brought in with a big congregation. And it also elevated Joseph a bit, and Oliver felt himself slipping away. And I think that's when he was kind of like, fuck all this, you did a terrible thing. And they were like, brother Cowdery, thou shalt not. And then eventually, Joseph, it's the same kind of thing. He got a new best guy, had beef with Sydney, new guy, and so on, until you get to Brigham Young.
It's pretty obvious to me that this guy Mark is definitely on payroll in this whole endeavor. I mean, he's very much like all of their life coach, spiritual coach, therapist.
He's their teacher.
Yeah.
Has he had any more allegations since 19 years old, or was...
No, I think he's had a bunch throughout his career.
Oh, God.
Like, I don't... Because that wasn't just one, there was another one. I feel like we don't have the time to get more into that right now, but it seems like, yeah, shady guy.
Okay.
For most people, most of the time, classical monogamy, and I say classical monogamy, is probably the best road, and not a simple one. Because actually, in this kind of classical monogamy vision, everyone envisions classical monogamy as this, perfect man and woman, first off, right? Heteronormative, if we can use that word. There's always a man and
He's an ally.
a woman. There's 4 perfect kids, incredible grandchildren. There's a philanthropic organization that they're all working in to make the world better. They have insanely beautiful Christmas parties and Thanksgiving. They all love each other.
Or at least pictures that
Or at
look
least
insanely
pictures, right?
beautiful. that they send you.
Unimaginably, of just like this bliss and harmony, and you can just see the picture of all of them, and everything else is somehow reaching for that. Now, Donny Osmond might have made that happen in Salt Lake City, or may not.
Mormon references again.
It was funny that he went to a Mormon example of like Donny Osmond might have made that monogamy work.
Does this guy have a Mormon background?
No, he was a rabbi.
He was a rabbi.
But he was like, I think he was a disgraced rabbi.
A disgraced rabbi?
Which normally we would love, but I'm not certain if he's been disgraced. So just in case that's.
I mean, it seems like he's been disgraced all along.
I mean, he's
in
been
whatever
disgraced by Dr. Phil. He's had his ass handed to him by Dr. Phil, which is as good as having your rabbi-ship taken away, I assume.
Classical monogamy, which again, I think is probably the best path for most people most of the time, is filled with holy and broken hallelujahs. And the reason why Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah has more covers made of it than any other story is because it's about
This is where he
holy
does.
hell and broken hallelujahs. Is that what he said? Did they edit him out? Did he say
No,
holy shit?
he just kind of said it weird. But this is where he is going to begin invoking the lyrics of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which I find to be a little unsettling and not right.
That's too bad.
Stolen valor, I would say so.
And the reason why Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah has more covers made of it than any.
I love Leonard Cohen.
I know,
But you never want to be the guy cornering someone at a party to be like, Leonard Cohen.
No.
You know?
And I don't know that you need to be invoking Leonard Cohen to sign off on this radical monogamy, which is polyamory.
There's a song that where she talks about some guy in Leonard Cohen male manipulator shit. It's great. I'll find it. And so relevant to those of you who know, you know what I'm talking about.
More covers made of it than any other story is because it's about, wow, love is not a victory march, right? It's a cold and it's a broken, it's a holy and broken hallelujah, right? Meaning it's
I feel like it's the melody that makes it so widely covered personally, but
That too. Not to mention the parody capability there.
who among us hasn't covered Hallelujah in some form and invoked polygamy in the lyrics?
We literally did.
Can't stop saying invoked.
I like to invoke and sometimes evoke.
not simple. There's agony, there's ecstasy, there's pain, there's abandonment, there's trauma. So monogamy itself is a beautiful and gorgeous journey, which works for many people or doesn't, but it's a gorgeous, sacred possibility, which should be at the center of culture. Beautiful. We got that. And it's a critical and. Historically, what's happened is the way monogamy has been lived is through deception.
See, he makes some valid points, right? Like, this guy says a lot of stuff that I'm like, yep. He talks about eros a lot, which that's been kind of just a hobby subject of mine lately. But again, you'll see.
I kind of disagree that monogamy ought to be the standard,
the cultural standard.
Yeah, because even straight people with children, like, can still have polyamorous interests, still have like loving relationships.
And you can still be pair bonded and non-monogamous. Like, you can still like have children with one person, and you know, like, I think historically humans were pair bonded but not monogamous. So we had like our person, and then would frolic within that.
What moves reality forward from the molecular to the world of animals, of life, to the world of humans is crisis. Every crisis is always a crisis of relationship. It's never not. So every crisis is a crisis of intimacy. You solve a crisis of intimacy by actually reaching.
Did they ask him to do this? Were they like, hey, really quick, we're going to start off by go off, bestie?
Yeah, because it's always better to have 4 people in a podcast as opposed to 3. Yeah, no, he's basically just there to do all this scene setting and to just spiritualize all of this so that by the time the women like enter the picture, a lot of people probably checked out. Like, you kind of don't even learn what it is that they're all referring to, which is this guy's revelation in a temple in Egypt that he needed to impregnate 2 women, his wife and a woman he had just met on Raya.
Reality is the progressive deepening of intimacies. So when we run into a crisis of relationship, okay, so monogamy, right, classically, it's not exactly working. So what do? So we move to serial monogamy. Oh, it's the right structure, but didn't work with that person. The problem was the person. Let me try it another time. The last piece, I just want to honor all 3 of you. You know, Alana, Vailana, Aubrey.
Don't speak, I'm still going.
Crazy proud of you. Because all 3 of you have said, we want to live with integrity. We want to live without deception. We want to live without artifice. We want to live without cheating, without lying. We want to live in a full, profound authenticity and grace. And we want to do it not just for ourselves. We want to do it for the sake of the evolution of love.
Just the vibe of these 2 guys talking about like how holy and amazing and evolved this configuration is before the women have even talked. When it's like, at the end of the day, you are talking about this one man's vision that he had, that he wanted for himself. You hear from these other 2, they don't act like they had like a pre-existing interest in polyamory. Like, it seems like him and his wife had maybe like had threesomes together, or, you know, they weren't like completely rigid, closed, but they describe themselves as monogamish. It didn't sound like this is what either of these women had in mind for themselves. And so just to have this guy there being like, I'm so proud of all 3 of you, as if it's just equal, like as if the choices that the 3 of them have made are all equal, is complicated, because it's like they have ultimately signed off on it willingly after a lot of, you know.
After 20 minutes of spieling.
Well, after being like, they've wrestled with it a bunch, you know. It's like, yeah, Joseph Smith didn't go to Emma Smith and Emma Smith was immediately like, yeah, take other wives. It's like, these types of men always have to make their case for a while and sort of wear the women down over time. And it's
get
like,
caught enough times that you're like, okay, it's time to integrate this into my life.
Way, so I might as well just accept it. And
I'm choosing to be open about this now.
Yeah. So there's a lot of complicated stuff that, and to me, it just is, just the vibes of this Mark guy are so heinous to me. The fact that you're just like speaking about how holy this all is, which like I absolutely believe that polyamory can be holy just like monogamy can be. But it's just like, this isn't like 3 people came to the table together with equal desires. It's like they've been molded into what this man wanted them to be for this thing that he wanted. And now these 2 dudes are just sitting there for 20 minutes before we even hear from the women talking about how great it is. Come on. It's like, at least have the wherewithal to like recognize how that reads from a PR perspective, you know?
Yeah.
And the story really begins with me recognizing fundamentally that I was unwilling to actually be in deception. And that I had a thriving wild stallion of Eros that desired.
This is why I'm obsessed with this conversation. He doesn't say, I'm horny for other women. He says, I had a thriving wild stallion of Eros in me.
I am literally putting that in my Grindr bio.
Thriving wild stallion of Eros. It's like, we have no issue with using myth and symbols, but I'm just like, this is a conversation where I'm like, you guys need to learn how to talk about your lives and what you want apart from the symbols. Like, use the symbols if you find them, but I'm like, if you can't step outside of the symbols and the spiritualized language and the jargon, you're lost in the source.
Yeah. sometimes we're loving each other just because we love each other and not for the evolution of love itself.
Yeah.
That's kind of a huge weight to take on. Like,
I know.
I have to radically transform the nature of love.
The only way people can do a throuple in like the monogamous context of our society is like we're actually driving civilization forward. It's like you're just in a throuple, guys.
You're
you are at the end of the
literally-
day just a throuple.
Yeah. We're not fucking just to fuck. We're actually radically transforming the very act of fucking. I can't even say fucking because that demeans the act that we're performing too much.
Radical monogamous throupling. That's what they're saying.
1 + 1 = 3.
We've always said that triangle is the strongest shape.
You know, different experiences, different connections. So I'm in around 2013. I'm coupled with my partner at the time, Whitney Miller. And I'm starting to rise as the CEO of On It. I'm starting to get a platform. I'm starting to network with a lot of influential people and athletes. And I see that the majority of the men, which were mostly my friends, but also some of the women that I knew, were unfaithful. There was so many of them. Not all.
Making a valid point here, right? I do think a lot of infidelity happens because people have never even been introduced to the concept of polyamory, let alone through like a shame-free lens. But I'm like, I don't think it's common that, like, I think there is something specific about the circle of men he seemed to run in. Like, I don't think all men are cheating the way that he seems to paint it. But I'm like, but I believe that there's like a higher rate of infidelity in the circles you run in, just being real.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I feel like men and people in general have reputations.
They be cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do be.
So, but it's like, the solution is not this. I mean, maybe for them, it's the only way their psyches can like.
It's kind of
deal.
It's giving Katy Perry, like, I went to space and none of you fuckers even understand what loving Earth is about till you've been to space with Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you don't even get polyamory or monogamy unless you've literally had psychedelic visions in a temple in which the god Isis came down and bequeathed to you 2 precious virgins.
Not all of them, but so many of them were. And they would tell the stories of the stress that they would hold in their body, breaking out as psoriasis, breaking out as all of these neurological conditions to physiological conditions, and the stress of worried about whether they'd been caught. So not only is it the selfish desire not to have to bear that burden.
How do people endure the anxiety of that long term?
You don't think my psoriasis is the result of monogamy, do you?
Your toxic monogamy is literally showing.
You know, which I simply couldn't. I have a tendency towards.
I simply couldn't. He's like, I got power and influence as my status as CEO was rising, and I realized all these other men be fucking, and I wanted to be fucking
I wanted a piece
too.
of that action.
But I was gonna need a specific story to sell it to my wife.
And so that's why you're probably wondering what brought me to Egypt.
Record scratch.
Far too much neurosis and also too deep a commitment to God. Every time I'm in a plant medicine journey, you know, Mother Ayahuasca sits me down and lets me know every place that I've been out of integrity. So it was not a possibility. So then I sat down with Whitney.
I do believe that. As silly as this spiel
Yeah,
is,
I believe it
do
too.
believe that you could have a nightmare for
Yeah.
yourself on an ayahuasca journey and be raked over the coals for the ways that you're not living in integrity.
Yeah, and I also believe that this type of personality would absolutely be someone that's like, I bet I can figure out a workaround for this. And he did.
And I said, hey, Whitney, like, I love you, but I don't think I can do this monogamy thing.
So basically, his ex-girlfriend Whitney didn't really go for it. I think they maybe tried it and it didn't work out, not really sure. But and he also broke up with Whitney for a while. They got back together. It doesn't really matter. But during the time when he was still with Whitney, he meets his current wife, Viana.
Just want to say based off my own little anecdotal evidence, not on global nor national trends, I just feel like there is a little something to the Arrested Development joke of like, does opening up your relationship work? And it's like, oh no, it usually falls apart, but it might work for us. But that's so different than going into a relationship where openness is kind of the default versus changing the nature of the relationship. Changing midstream can be really hard. It's not impossible. People do it.
Yeah. And I do honestly agree with Mark that sometimes chaos can be like an agent for change that is necessary. I just wrote an article about how sex therapist Natasha Helfer-Parker schooled Mormon stories on its stigmatization of non-monogamy. So join my Substack if you want to read that. But yeah.
During that period that I met Vailana, And Vylana, I'm with Whitney and I'm starting to dance with Vylana. And she's like, what the hell are you doing, bro? That's your girlfriend over there. We were at Burning Man. She didn't get it. And then we sat down in the RV and I explained, like, no, this is a different construct.
Not
Just the context
Not the
of-
Burning Man RV poly DTR. I love it. Love it. Love it. Been in one.
Just call it polyamory. Everything we're doing is blessed.
You probably why we've invited you into this camper van. It's to tell you about the joys of polyamory.
So, but this is worth picking up on. When he meets Vylana at Burning Man, she's like, wait, what? You have a girlfriend? Like, she's not trying to be polyamorous. So just kind of
in the arrangement that we have. And, I kind of let her know without being too overt at that moment that I was quite interested. And she was also like, hey, fuck off. I'm not interested in being one of your girlfriends. Like, I got main character energy. I got main shit.
And she really does. I mean, what a fucking 10. To say this man, for all of his whatever, he sure knows how to pull 10s.
Yeah, good for him. The manosphere
God, at what
really,
cost?
being an influencer in the manosphere really pays off.
Yeah.
Energy here. So I was like, damn, that's a bummer. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I was faced with this. Like, I had a vision, like, well, if I got rid of everybody else, then potentially I could accelerate.
If I got rid of everybody else, he's
What that mean,
with
bestie?
his girlfriend Whitney. Like, I mean, I guess he's like being polyamorous, so he probably has some like side chick situations going on. But really, when you're saying if I got rid of everyone else, you're like, if I break up with my girlfriend.
Yes.
Is essentially what you are saying.
Yes. Thanks for saying the quiet
He's
part
like,
out loud.
and just the fact that every single sentence these people say is so hyper spiritualized in a way that is so unnecessary. Like, he's like, I had this vision of what if I got rid of everybody. It's like, you had the thought, what if I break up with my girlfriend, then I'd be able to fuck this girl. Like,
you had an intrusive
and that's
borderline
fine.
episode. You're like, what if I just cut off everybody in my life? Everybody else, the one other person he's been in relationship with this whole time.
yeah, and like maybe have it.
He's like, I'm looking around and there's some dead weight in the room. Who could it be? I'm looking at all
Whitney.
of you, but I'm gonna have to just choose. Let me close my eyes. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Get
Even
to take her by the toe. Oops.
The Hustle podcast bro of saying, then I could accelerate with Vylana instead of like, then I could.
Then we could be in full acceleration.
I had a vision, like, well, if I got rid of everybody else, then potentially I could accelerate the possibility of being with Vylana, because I felt this really strong urge and attraction and had.
That's horniness.
That is what that is called.
Simple
That is
desire.
called a classic male erection. It's like, I am diagnosing you with penis activity.
Mystical signs that came in, actually. We had a.
So
I love the
actually, Tan, I
mystical
think
signs
before
telling me
you
I need to
speak-
break up with my girlfriend because I need to accelerate.
The number
quickly.
of boys in college at BYU Idaho who told me they had mystical signs to break up with me.
Really?
10 of, I mean, it was used on me multiple times. Everyone at BYU Idaho would be like, the spirit just told me this isn't working out, because it's way easier to break up with someone by saying that God told you than to just be like, I'm not feeling it.
It sucks that my neurospiciness is like classic, just anxiety, depression, attention, whatever. And I just wanted a little bit of that, like, Delulu. I never felt like I could be like, the spirit told me we shouldn't be together, because I was like, I don't really know that the spirit did. I just am not feeling it. But I would just be like,
That's why your
It's not
deconstruction
working.
was inevitable.
That's
there
why.
were so many signs.
damn. They said they were just like, God
Unwilling
does
to
not sanction
spiritually
this.
manipulate. You're not going to work out here.
An intimate encounter and a white star of light.
Okay. Also, in his defense, New Romance does actually activate.
It does a number on you,
The,
yeah.
The synchronistic believer
Yes.
in
Nothing like limerence to make mysticism rampant in your life. and
love is
psyche.
magical. It
Love is
really
magical.
is. And as quick and horny as it is in a Burning Man RV,
Oh, yeah.
there is something to it. There's a reason that the poets are always yapping on about it. But thank God we've got these people here to transform it. You thought you knew love. You thought you knew limerence. Now we've got a radical new evolution, and I can't wait to hear the revelations that are coming out of the Burning Man RV.
It's so monogamous, it's polyamorous.
I would love to be a fly on the wall as like King Louis or whoever who's about to kill his wife because he's like, I want to marry another wife, but I simply
King
can't.
shit, king
He's
shit.
like, I just actually got a revelation.
I'm going to get rid of the other one.
Yeah, I some of those people started whole new churches of England
Yeah.
just for that, because they're like, instead of just be like, we're doing polyamory now.
Yeah. You're the king. You can do whatever you want. But I guess the church would.
Yeah, not to the Pope.
Really strong urge and attraction, and had mystical signs that came in, actually. We had an intimate encounter, and a white star of light came in my third eye. And
again, we've all been there, but it is so important to recognize the chemical activity that is going on when you're in infatuation with a new person.
You're literally seeing stars, my guy. Like, that's just some high-key brain activity. Like, congrats.
This is where this is all very nuanced, though, because, like, in his defense, he did end up marrying this woman. So clearly she was for him.
Yeah.
They clearly have something because they've been together at least for a few years. And I do believe that, like, our psyches sort of know when things are for us, It's just... my issue with all of this is like not actually what's happening. It's like the rhetoric that it's all standing on. I'm like, the fact that you're having to use all that rhetoric to justify it tells me there's a lot under the surface that you're not able to examine within yourself. And for, these are all people that would presumably claim to be like wildly conscious and aware of their shadow side. And you'll see more. We'll watch more before we talk about that.
It was open-eyed, closed-eyed vision. I wasn't on any medicine, and it was like God put an asterisk in this moment, and I was like, fuck. And then she coupled with somebody else, and I just remained friends with her and carried on with my polyamory journey.
And everything's always a journey.
Sometimes God do be putting asterisks around. We shall see.
Yeah, so I've edited this down, but at this point, he's now with Vianna, so he's let go of everyone else.
He got rid of everybody else.
He cut off deadweight Whitney. He's now with Vianna. And because she is wanting to be in a monogamous relationship, he's like, all right, let's do monogamy. Because this woman is hot enough to be worth it. You got to be aware of the... like, I could imagine it being very easy for a man like this to be like, well, this woman is so hot and amazing that, like, I'll be able to be monogamous with her. It's like, know thyself.
6 months in, he's like, if I got rid of everybody else...
What if I impregnated a 20-year-old, though?
Is there anybody else that could possibly go?
Yeah, it's like the polyamorous writing was on the wall... but boy, has he had to go through a lot of...
It usually is a rocky road to polyamory.
Yeah, yeah.
I shouldn't say usually. It can be.
I've never seen it look quite like this, though.
So then we start off, and it's this wild and passionate love affair, of course, bringing things up for us as we've made this leap of commitment and got married by Elvis, and so much love and passion and so much beauty.
I love how their definition of evolving love, transforming... the most commented on phenomenon experienced by humans, and their version of that is we got married by Elvis after I ditched my ex. What did that mean? Means that they got married probably in Vegas.
Oh, that's what that means.
I mean, that's where that's famous, is
okay.
Like getting married by Elvis in Vegas.
Cool.
It's like, we're so evolved and transformative, we got really sloshed in Vegas.
Yeah.
Do you think they had a three-way with the Elvis preacher?
I do think they had a lot of three-ways, but he's
like, actually, I'm getting a vision. Elvis?
Something tells me he's not into an MMF.
No, that's not what he's Googling.
Just like an MFFFFFF.
I haven't watched a lot of him. I've been like peripherally aware of him over the years. But he's always just struck me as like a real straight guy, and I'm just like not interested. But
he's someone to me where I wouldn't even need to know this story. Just like the minute I encountered him, he just doesn't resonate with me on any level. And then I saw that he promotes like vaccine misinformation. And, he's like a big RFK guy, and of course he is. And
yeah. I was gonna give it a whole, little my God's little asterisk, which is he's probably has good intentions and
I believe he's being earnest in this, I think there's a lot of talk about, something we've talked about for years on this channel is like, did Joseph Smith really feel like God signed off, like told him to take these kids as his wife?
He was getting mystical signs. He was getting rid of everyone else.
And here's the thing. I'm just like, because when Joseph first was, getting it on with Fanny Alger, like he hadn't even claimed to have the sealing power. So he wasn't, but then once he got caught, he then needed to come up with this narrative to support it. And I believe that probably felt real to him, or if it wasn't at first, it became real, you know? Because I also do think, a thing with narcissistic personality types, which it seems very reasonable to believe he's one of them, is like it's a lot easier for those people to believe that their own thoughts are like more grandiose, that they serve this higher purpose. It's like we're not just in a throuple, we're like raising the consciousness of humanity, and it's like, you're kind of not wrong in that, like, you bringing this to public light kind of is doing something to facilitate.
He's got a big followership.
But it's maybe not quite the narrative you think it is, There's a lot of, like, you can be right about the fact that, like, you are, like, supposed to be with this woman and, you know, supposed to tell this story, but like you may not have as much of a handle on what it all means as you think, because you're just taking your every, you know, personal revelation as just kind of a universal fact. So basically my point is that, like, yeah, I believe he was earnest, but I also believe Joseph Smith was earnest. And I also believe that Mark was earnest when he said he was in love with that 13-year-old at 19. So earnestness doesn't really get you out of...
Yeah.
But again, I mean, he's not marrying children, so it is different from Mark and Joseph Smith, to give him that credit. And yeah, I mean, he seems like someone who's just like, probably is narcissistic and is very into the spiritual world and plant medicine. And I just think he's like, again, too lost in the source. Like he can't see. He's not grounded in anything.
Hopefully he's got enough emotional maturity to manage 2 adult public-facing relationships. Not that there's narcissists who can't do that. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad we're doing this video, because this is a story I'm going to be very interested to watch play out. There's more I have to say, but I'll play this for now.
As we've made this leap of commitment and got married by Elvis, and so much love and passion and so much beauty that's come in, and we start the process of exploring. And that exploring, you know,
threesomes, just in case anyone needs us to slightly decode something. It's been all right up to this point. It's about to get pretty intense, the spiritual language.
We've been perusing the astral realm for that peachy divine fruit. Emphasis on astral realm. You're on the apps.
So notice this sentence.
We start the process of exploring, and that exploring, you know, certainly brought up a lot of different things for you. And I'd love for you.
So essentially saying we started having threesomes, or, you know, everything is just like the most verbose thing. It's never just we started exploring. We started the process of exploring, the journey of this.
The concept of exploring.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you now to pass it over for you to start telling the story here from your perspective.
Once again, we are 20 minutes into the podcast episode. It's only 9 on our end, but...
Because particularly, as Mark was saying, you had never really experienced a relationship that was in truth and integrity all the way. And so go through kind of what those early days were like, leading up, of course, to the moment where Alana enters the scene. And then we'll hear Alana's story that'll bring us up to present. And we'll kind of tell the story, the most interesting part of the story, of how we figured out what this was and what Spirit was trying to communicate to us.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't want to get too far into my history, but my history was the 70% of deception and shame and lying and betrayal. So
she is beautiful.
I know. Both of these women are so stunning. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, just worth noting that it seems like, well, at least her whole past was all, she'd been cheated on in every relationship, it sounds like, from here.
She had been cheated on?
She said her past was the 70% deception.
Does that mean she was deceiving at all?
I think she's
Could go either way?
No, I think she's implying that she was cheated on always in the past. And I just think that's an interesting tidbit. Both of these women in this interview you're going to see it doesn't seem like they've ever had like any great relationships. I think it's definitely a significant factor playing into how likely they might be to accept an arrangement that doesn't feel like super authentic to them.
You know, physical body has had a whole lifetime of a lot of trauma around that particular, you know, like a lot of things in relationship, like there being something that was hidden. There was always something that was hidden, you know, like I would feel like this was a beautiful relationship and we're deeply in love and all these things. And then there was like something.
And can't you so see how if someone has a lot of cheating trauma, it could be kind of like an existential kink to almost like put yourself back in that situation, but like in what feels like a safer container because it's all out in the open. Like I can sort of see how someone who maybe doesn't like ultimately want to be polyamorous could maybe be drawn to it in a situation like this because they're like, well, it's better than being cheated on. At least I'm kind of like more in control.
Yeah, and maybe it is a good alternative for her so that she feels like other people will be upfront with her about their intentions and desires, and she can be upfront about hers.
And I do appreciate people just being honest. I think there can be a lot of shame in monogamy about people like just admitting attraction to others, or even like we kind of really demonize people for wanting to become polyamorous if they're in monogamous relationships. But I'm like, that's just a hard situation. There's nothing wrong with a guy realizing within monogamy that he wants to be polyamorous. Again, my issue in this whole video is not with that fact.
something that would just come out of left field and just like totally take my legs out from under me because there was something that was hidden. And so I stepped into our relationship, you know, knowing the sensitivity around like my animal body and my desire at that point to just really desiring to feel a sense of safety. I'd never known safety and stability and in some ways just feeling like radically chosen by somebody. And so entering into it, you know, like that was our agreement. It was, I guess, monogamy.
He got rid of everyone else for you. He's loyal.
I know. Never feeling chosen.
Didn't have, you know, Mark here to kind of help walk us through. And
see, that's...
Wait, they brought on Mark to walk them
that's
through?
why I'm like... it's like I'm trying to be as like non-judgmental of all of this as possible, because again, it does seem to be 3 consenting adults, but then I'm just like, fucking Mark is there, and like he just has all the hallmarks of a spiritually manipulative person.
That was Joseph Smith's tactic too. It'd be like, Hiram, go explain the scriptures to her.
Yeah.
Like,
also, I know we haven't even got there yet, but it's like, it's never the women having the revelation that their husband, you know what I mean? It's always the man being like, God has told me to take another wife.
they're like, well, I love you, and if God's given you that, then
I'm like,
yeah,
give
I'm
the
down.
revelation to Emma Smith first, you know, if it's so hard for Joseph.
Yeah.
and help walk us through and help us to see alternate, you know, possibilities and also just create the structure that...
See, I just feel so uncomfortable about this because I'm like, I feel like Mark is on Aubrey's payroll. So it's like, and I'm not certain about that, but it just, I mean, it seems to be his life
subscribes
coach.
at the very least.
I mean, he's definitely his life coach. So there's some kind of arrangement, but it's like her being like, oh, we're entering into this like new kind of polyamory that makes me uncomfortable, but thank God we've got Mark there to guide us. And it's like, I feel like Mark's just like a yes man to like sign off on any toxic, I don't know. It's really hard to trust Mark is my point.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him building the infrastructure of my relationships.
No. Oof. Even if he at 19 was like, I was in love with that 13-year-old girl, which it sounds like that was not the case because her account describes false. So I feel like he's lying anyway. But it's like he was reflecting on that as like a 50-year-old and he wasn't being like, yeah, that age gap was really problematic. He still was kind of signing off on it as being okay.
Yeah.
That's not who you want guiding you.
creates, you know, a lot of the safety. And so we were sort of just, you know, trusting in ourselves. And what the journey felt like for me was feeling you in your desire and really wanting to find the place within myself where I could meet you in that desire, not from a place of me like submitting to you, but how can I actually be on the inside with you?
Can I fully change myself so that it doesn't feel like submitting? It feels like what I want now, even though I currently don't want it.
Our whole relationship has felt like me just pressing edge, like pressing, okay, here's my edge. All right. Okay. Then I'm good here. And then like, okay, here's my next fucking edge. And it's just like a constant pressing forward into really.
See, I'm like, that can be just sort of a normal part of a relationship with like ever deepening intimacy. But that is a bit of a yellow flag to me, especially because he's the person with more power in the dynamic by virtue of being the brand Aubrey Marcus, I guess, and presumably like richer and more socially connected. And it's like, we can't really say for certain, but it absolutely could be a kind of a classic narcissistic abuse situation. But then even with that, it's like women still kind of sign off on that in certain ways. Like, and it's complicated because it's like they haven't learned to not accept that treatment. So they are like consenting, but it's like there's manipulation happening that they're not aware of, you know, like being a human is just messy. The point I was going to make is that like that's what this could be, but it's also could be like a spectrum of things. So I'm not like saying that it is that. I'm just saying like it definitely seems to have some like very questionable ingredients. The most questionable one being Mark.
I've been so driven by fear. I think we have a choice when we're in fear. It's like you can try to control and contain to feel safe, but how alive is that relationship really? And so what I felt like I've always been left with you is like I want you to feel like you can be yourself. I want you to feel like you can be loved in being all of who you are. And that choice and me, you know, willing that choice.
I like what she's saying. I agree with what she's saying. I think there are so many ways in relationships that we exert undue levels of control to try and feel safe. And like, it is important for us to challenge and question our fear. But then it's also like, are you feeling like you have the exact same amount of ability to show up in your truth and to be loved as you are? Because it's like you cannot remove the fact that in this discussion, it's his desire that these women have had to come around to. So it's like, you know, it's just fundamentally not equal. Like I do I believe them when they say that they've like ultimately willingly consented to it, but it's just like very murky because like if you just wanted to be monogamous with him, it's like, well, you kind of can't have your like, do you get to show up fully in your desire if like what you want just like isn't even on the table? And I'm not saying that he should force himself to do something that's not true for him. Mm-hmm. I'm just pointing out kind of like the complexity of all this.
Yeah.
Which I think they would acknowledge too.
Is meant a lot of shedding and dying for me of like my stories of comparison or competition, or now if you look at them that way, am I not as important? Like that, it's just like all of those things that can arise, and just feeling the thing that the person that you love the most placing their attention on something else, like it brings up a lot of stuff. So it's, even our journey in the exploration, like there's been so much beauty, like, and that's what I really carry with me. But it's felt, it's like a diamond that's been constantly forged over and over and over and over through the fire. But the fire is the truth. The fire is the...
Just diamonds don't get forged, but that's fine.
Really? So we got to keep that metaphor though, like so useful. I think, I like what she's saying, like on its face. I also wonder how many people want to be in a relationship where you constantly feel like you're being in a fire, Like I believe in refinement and all that and challenging your fear, but I just wonder at the end of the day if that's going to feel good to you forever.
My relationship is literally so hard. I feel like in a constant state of abandonment, and but I know that it's really just me being resistant to change and growth, because this really is the most evolved way. Mark even said.
Mark has said. Yeah.
And maybe it's fine.
The way Mark delegitimizes this more than anyone, like more than Aubrey himself for me, because I just feel like it's like, what, you can't handle it just being you and your two women. You need to have another guy there to sign off on it.
To literally mansplain.
Yes, honestly.
Will you tell them what we're doing here, Mark, please? They ask me questions and I'm like, nah, I'm taking it up with Mark.
The fire is this paradox that I'm actually the most safe because there is nothing hiding in the shadows that's left to bite me. And now that...
And there's like a third option, where it's just like you don't always have to challenge your fear at the highest level all the time, is my point. It's okay if you want to do that. And the sense I get from watching this is that these are people who all enjoy intensity and they enjoy like going to like the maximum with everything. And like, fair enough if that's what you want to do, but you don't that's not like, doesn't make you more evolved,
Yeah.
There's something to be said for like retaining some kind of feet on the ground sometimes.
Yeah. Monogamy. Mark did explain how monogamy is usually best for most people.
I think that's because him and his wife are monogamous.
And now that doesn't make it easy, and we'll continue to progress through the story. But like, it's been the most difficult initiation of my whole life, like by far, and the most rewarding, and the deepest love, and the deepest intimacy, and ultimately what I can feel over and over again when I'm in the choosing of this love and the loving you in the way that you deserve to be loved, because you really love me in that way.
She's saying stuff that I think a lot of polyamorous people can relate to, like that transition from monogamy to polyamory can be the most destabilizing, chaotic, painful, it's bringing up your deepest shit. And yet there's a reason people do it. There's a reason people push through. Not everyone pushes through. Some people find that polyamory isn't for them, but...
Yeah, and sometimes it is, it's chaotic because it's not always intellectual first. Like sometimes it's meeting somebody who you're like, whoa, there's this real, like with him, where like there's this really strong thing that feels like it ought to be pursued, but I'm now in this structure. So then your brain starts reeling for like, okay, well, what does this mean? And people try
and that's where a revelation in an Egyptian temple can really come in clutch.
That just ties the knot so perfectly for me every time. I literally will not get into a new breeder relationship until I've had a revelation, and I'm like, gotta get to Egypt real quick. No, but I forgot what I was saying.
Oh, sometimes you meet someone before you've even philosophically aligned yourself with polyamory.
Yeah,
so you're kind of seeing the limitations of monogamy playing out before your eyes.
Yeah, and maybe, there's ways to like that toxic monogamy can be still approached and changed from within the system It doesn't
change
work for any
monogamy
other
from
system, but it
within.
might work within this one. That you can, there's ways to be like, oh, I can have like autonomy and offer that to my partner, maybe in new ways that haven't been allowed before. I can be honest about my internal experience. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I have to go act on it, but maybe it's okay to be like, oh, that person's really cute, aren't they?
Sometimes even giving yourself permission to flirt a little bit can kind of like satisfy that craving, like that TED Talk Monogamish, where that researcher basically makes a case for like, it's healthy to flirt. It's healthy to kind of charge your eroticism in that way. It doesn't mean you have to go full polyamorous.
But because the nature of human desire is so strong, and that trying to contain things often allows, compels them to expand or augment or in some way, that I feel like sometimes people do end up making mistakes or going further than they thought, or into situations that they might not be most ideal because they're just starting to like experiment and explore, and it can be a little bit messy.
I've written about this a lot on my Substack, but I do think there's like a massive amount of grace. People aren't even, people who transition from monogamy to polyamory aren't even really prepared for how much grace they're going to have to give their partner, because like once they're actually in the arena, even if they've read all the books, they've done all the work, it's like kind of a big thing about polyamory is you're learning a lot about yourself very fast. And so you can't always predict, like you might think that, oh, of course I would be perfectly honest with my wife about everything, but then when you're actually in a situation, the truths that you're uncovering about yourself are so difficult. It's actually like
and
much
so new
more
often.
it's like you're still reckoning with them within yourself, but then there's this expectation to be like telling your partner everything, and then they maybe are like extremely anxious, so they're like requiring like a level of truth that you can't give in that. It's all very messy. Like
and sometimes partners don't want, or there's a line on what they do want to hear, and maybe too much is too much, and you have to like figure that out too. And, there's just a lot.
It's one of those things where you to like echo a sentiment they say a lot in this podcast, that you really are stepping into the unknown. And I think a lot of people are sort of shocked by the amount that can be destabilizing, or like the future can't be predicted. Like I think people can like study polyamory a lot and then enter into it, and then they're like actually way out of their depth, because that's kind of just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and hopefully people are reading the books, and there's a lot of great books. More Than Two is a thicky book just full of like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And every single one pretty much goes back to like, try to see your partner as an individual with, and that you are. That's
kind of what concerns me with this dynamic, is it's like, it kind of just feels like, to me at least, they're all geared around like his story, like
meshing into his thing.
Yeah, and like they all have the same therapist, and the therapist is Mark. So it's like,
and the therapist is getting dragged by Dr. Phil.
I know, fucking Dr. Phil. So I'm like, I just feel like you girls need individual therapists. That's just me.
That was my experience leading up to Alana making her way into our life. It's been a wild journey, and I've died. I mean, I've died so many times I can't even count. It's just hundreds and hundreds, but ultimately,
Again, that's like one of those things where that could be a perfectly healthy, normal sentiment, or it could be indicative of something a little bit darker, and you're having to like constantly self-betray and surrender who you are in the service of this thing that your partner wants. Yeah. But again, you're a 40-year-old woman, or however old she is, choosing to do that process. Yeah. So, yeah.
But ultimately, to kind of like bring us to that point, that's what I'd say.
Even before we get to Alana, which is entering stage left in a second, you said one sentence, which I just want to reflect back. It was a passing sentence, but it was so important. You said to Ab, you said, I wanted to meet your desire and to love you the way you deserve to be loved. And then you added a really critical sentence, which was, because you've loved me in that way. And I want to just really just to hear that, right? That actually you're wanting to meet your man in the depth of his desire because you feel he's meeting you in the depth of your desire. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a model of, how can we please the man?
Yeah.
It's how do we please the beloveds,
and it's
who are madly pleased.
Really hate when Mark weighs in.
Yeah, and it's also not like an equal, like I haven't had a natural inclination towards desiring other men. That's not really been true for me. So it's also not an equal, like you give me this, and it's not like this there's a reciprocity of energy in the ways that he loves me is different, and I've had to kind of overcome these things in my mind of feeling like this should be equal, because if I give this, and I think that I think a lot of relationships get stuck in that. It's like, what do I get?
Interesting. The one-way non-monogamy.
Which they do say later on in the episode. It does sound like these two women have had other partners.
That's great.
But it's like, even if they have, it's certainly not... like, this man is like...
They're not going on his podcast.
He's the mitochondria of this like three-pronged thing. That's a bad metaphor. Like, he's the center of this triangle. It's like, if they're going off and having other partners, it's obviously pretty casual, whereas he's like, I must impregnate both of these women. You know, it's a different... It's not like they're going to go off and like have a baby with someone else. Like, it's... Yeah. And so again, like, she's
Maybe.
making...
If ISIS demands it, you know?
She's making a point that I agree with, which is that like, what each person brings to the table in a relationship is not always identical, and like what each person needs is not always identical. So like...
Sure.
Yeah, couples can absolutely get stuck in this like tit for tat reciprocity trap. But again, it's like also potentially could be a yellow flag the way she's talking about that.
Yeah.
Because it seems to continue to paint this picture of like, oh, if it were really up to her, she'd just be monogamous with him.
Yeah.
But maybe you won't agree with me as you keep watching her, because she really goes to bat for the throuple. So
while it's not quid pro quo, there's the openness in the space that I think also
There's a profound equality.
There is
Not
equality.
quid pro quo, but there's a deep equality. There's
Fundamental
deep mutuality.
shut up, Mark. Like, why the fuck are you here? Like,
Cultural
And
equality.
respect.
Yeah.
Deep respect, a full possibility and love within. And this is just the name we're calling it. And that'll be a perfect time to go to the next. We've given this a name. We're calling it radical monogamy in the field.
why have you given it the name radical monogamy? Why? How is it radical monogamy if there's, first of all, you're a throuple, but even if you're trying to say like, it's radical monogamy because like we're all deeply committed to each other, it's like, but you say later on in the episode that they have other partners. So I'm like, nothing about this is monogamy.
I know I said I like gobbledygook, but even I have my tolerance.
I know.
What are you talking
I'm
about?
like all for choosing your own labels, but I'm like, at a certain point, words have meaning, Mark.
What-
For
yeah,
example,
what
the
kind of
age
jo-
of consent.
He's like, age is just a number, an idea.
She was 13 going on 35. It's polyamorous going on monogamous. Yeah, I'm just like, also...
Some cultures don't even use numbers.
And might I just suggest, for all their talk about unshaming and blah, 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 it's like, but aren't you potentially suggesting some kind of lingering shame in the fact that you feel the need to call it monogamy still?
Yeah.
Like, what's so wrong with calling it what it is? Like, why do you feel the need to cling to the word monogamy?
This is some Jordan Peterson bullshit.
Oh my
where
God.
He's like, define monogamy, define in love, define.
Only Jordan Peterson gets to define who's a Christian. I don't even know if I'm a Christian. Only Jordan Peterson could tell me if I was or wasn't.
Yeah.
You saw the 20 Atheists versus Jordan Peterson.
I
Or
saw
you've
the
heard
buzz
of
around it. I accidentally saw the tiniest clip and was like, I hate this. I hate all content around
His
it. I am not
mood has
interested in
really-
seeing one single piece of
He's
it.
never been a good vibe, but his vibes lately are just
rancid.
so up. He just seems so not okay.
And the person I saw talking to him, I was like, you're not helping either. I don't like this.
In the field of erotic mystics. So paradoxically, this is
So they're calling it radical monogamy in the field of erotic mystics.
Oh, you can't just be horny at Burning Man. You've got to be part of the illumined brotherhood of the enlightened radical monogamous mystics of the order of Eros.
Age is just a concept.
we're calling it radical monogamy in the field of erotic mystics.
Who's we? Like me and the other like Nobel Prize laureates? Like who the fuck are you talking
think
about?
it's him and
you and your
Aubrey.
other like pervert friends.
Yeah. Dr. Phil, we need you to weigh in on this.
We should have got him for this episode.
When you're
damn
done with the ice raid, can you please...
it. God, fuck him.
So paradoxically, this is not about polyamory. That's the paradox.
But it is, though.
It is. It literally is.
is.
You're literally describing polyamory. I hate you, Mark.
You don't need to create new paradoxes. There's enough going on already. I hate you, Mark. We never hate anyone on this channel until fucking Mark.
That's the paradox. It's actually about radical monogamy, meaning deep, exclusive, lifelong, committed relationship, right? But not in the classical monogamous sense. It's an expanded.
No, stop. No, stop. Stop.
Mark does not stop, Tanner. This is a really pared down Mark. Mark is the person I cut out the most from this interview. He just fucking goes and goes and goes.
There's nothing more to say.
Yeah.
Words, they're fun, they're playful, they're paradoxical, but they mean things.
Yeah.
And
There's got to be some lines
they're
here.
useful in as much as they're useful. And when we're like, a word means either the exact things it means or the exact opposite, then we're literally getting into Joseph Smith territory like you said we weren't going to do.
Yeah. Yep.
And when we allow for uncommon arrangements, something beautiful emerges.
What do you mean you were in love with her? You were a 19-year-old man, and you're saying you were in love with a 13-year-old child? Does that not fit in your ear wrong? That's a felony.
Don't glasses push.
Had to. I wanted to put that in like 60
He's like,
times.
Dr. Phil, I've actually revolutionized love as a concept. You wouldn't even get this. It's called radically age-appropriate relationships. And
Dr. Phil, if you could just see the love letters that child wrote to me.
in like scrawled child script,
Yeah, I
Comic
know.
Sans letter. Jesus.
So Vi and I are in Miami. We've made it through some trials and tribulations.
Okay, so this is like the true beginning of the throuple. So they've been doing some threesomes. That's already been hard
This
for her.
hero's journey, taking us from the foreign land of the Burning Man RV all the way to the
Miami.
Vegas Elvis Chapel. Now we're in Miami. Things are just really happening in this relationship.
The scenes are incredible.
Yeah.
So Vi and I are in Miami. We've made it through some trials and tribulations of, having a lot of fun with different loverships and different experiences.
It's never lovers, it's lovership.
She literally just said she's not doing that. So when he's like, we have been enjoying, it's like, you have been doing and she's been
She's
tolerating.
been begrudgingly participating in threesomes.
Or hearing about yours or just seeing you wander off.
Well, I think at this point, they've been doing like threesome type stuff, but not actual polyamory. Not certain, but.
They haven't added the amory to the poly.
And at no point is this polyamory, Tana. It's radical monogamy in the field of ethical, what was it?
Thank
Eros,
you, yes.
mystical eros.
What's that, I'm spelling it out.
What was it? Radical monogamy in the field of mystical eros.
In the field of erotic mysticism, is that what he said?
Yep, that's right.
Radical monogamy.
It spells out like
in
marks.
Armit foam.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah, we know everyone I know who's practicing Armit foam. Yeah, we all call it that.
Loverships and different experiences and all of them had kind of gone in different separate directions, and we'd had so much fun. Although there was challenges, we'd had so much fun. Both of us were like, we're here in Miami for a month. We're going to look around. We're going to see if we can find anybody here in Miami. And it was coming towards the end of the trip. I'm in the weight room, and again, the mystical plays it's a theme.
I'm feeling God in this Miami gym right now.
Gym.
And this was where the mystical first steps in. I'm in the middle of a set, and we just worked out today. You saw me, my phone was there. It fell out of my pocket, but that was about the only time I gave it attention when I'm working out.
So he does work out with Mark too. Just an interesting tidbit.
Oh, such a weird boys club.
Yeah.
Attention when I'm working out, I'm fucking working out. I've done that for most of my life, right? Like workout is almost like it's a sanctuary. It's a sacred place for me. So I'm in the middle of my workout, and I just get this message. And the message is, go on Raya right now.
This is actually kind of a crazy story that he gets this message and that you'll hear the rest of it, but
We've all checked the apps at the gym. You don't need to be instructed by God to do it.
I honestly think, it's like, I don't claim to know all the mysteries of the universe, but do I believe it's possible that he was led to this? In some weird way, I sort of do. Like, it doesn't mean I sign off on all this that's happening or the way he's talking about it, but I'm like, it really did work out for him.
No, as a Leonard Cohen fan, I do appreciate the erotic transcendentalism of love. Like, there's something magical about it. I get it. But also, you can just be horny in the gym at Miami where you decided that you were already going to be pursuing somebody, and you can whip out your thing and you can find somebody on the app for celebrities today. It's just as simple as that.
But it is kind of a crazy story because, spoiler alert, but he meets the new young girl on Raya, and she had set her age limit to the age that he was about to turn in a few days. So if he hadn't have got on Raya that day at the gym, he actually probably wouldn't have met her. So there is
and then their
something
age gap
kinda...
relationship would have been inappropriate, but this one,
yeah.
wow,
He's
love
right
is just
at
a number.
that upper limit, that sweet spot.
And I go, huh, okay. And I've had enough messages from Spirit that I tend to listen, especially if it's low cost.
It's so hard being a Gemini
It is.
and having a foot in both worlds of the inner world of symbol and feeling and the personal mythos. I love it. And a skeptical side, a rational side, and
You have
and
to
a side
have
that's
both.
trying to just kind of keep things in
Yeah.
check. And I think love is kind of foundational to relationship, and in that way, the nature of the world and the universe, as it were. But I don't believe in like a personal God that is like pulling strings for me and whispering little things in my ear. And sometimes, again, I struggle with the exteriorization of internal processes. I was called to do this. Spirit asked me to do that. Because then again, it takes away some of the agency and it cloaks your personal desire in the transcendent, so that it's not just me wanting to get on right. It's not me wanting to do polygamy. It's not me wanting to, this or that. It's God wants me to do. God was calling me to do this. Spirit was asking me to do this. Isis was. It's
Yeah.
like, just say, even if you feel in your heart that the ego is a myth, an illusion, and that our free will is non-existent, and this is just a big mechanism just kind of playing out, and
Yeah.
spirit is all that there is, and it's just happening, and you're just witnessing it with the illusion of being of some sense of control.
Which is
that's
very real.
fine. Still,
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, their entire approach to spirituality and the way they talk about things just like so easily lends itself to spiritual bypassing. And to them, yeah, like I do believe that there are moments in life where we get these kind of promptings that seem to come from a place larger than us. And I think given the fact that like time isn't linear, time is a circle. So like, there's absolutely a world where I can sort of like believe in that. You know what I mean? Like that everything's interconnected. Time isn't even like linear. Sometimes we are just like led to things and or like there's moments where people can be like, just randomly have a voice in their head, tell them to do something. And then that thing saves their life, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, and that may not even, and like a prompting may be the wrong word, because again, that implies like an external messenger sending a message versus
Yeah.
just like maybe we have an intuitive system that is in some level tapped into the things that goes beyond our like immediate sense perception
Yeah.
and rational capability. I think our intuition is super powerful.
No, it
and
really
maybe
is.
we do have some connection to that like 5D timelessness and may have impressions of things, bigger than ourselves.
I was just telling you the other day, have done studies where this is from the Alex O'Connor consciousness interview with Sam Harris's wife, what's her name, Annika, where if they like isolate parts of people's brains, they can tell one part of people's brains like walk across the room and the other part of the brain like won't know that they've been told to do that. And so when you ask the subjects like, why did you walk across the room? They'll really confidently have a reason. They'll be like, I needed to go to the bathroom, or like and they'll say it really confidently, even though it's like their brain has just retroactively come up with that reason. So yeah, like intuition. And there was also a story in that podcast about a time when a guy was in Afghanistan. Some journalist or something was like on a ride along with this guy, and they drove into this town, and then all of a sudden this guy just completely turned around. Actually, both of these guys were like consciousness people, like they studied it. I can't remember all the details, but basically there's just times when our intuition will give us a message before our conscious brain even knows. So like when that driver was asked why he immediately turned around when he got into that town, he like genuinely didn't know. And then reflected on it later and was like, oh, there were no children on the street, which kind of told his body that there was something off, but his conscious brain didn't get there for hours.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. I also am sympathetic with some people like wanting to use the language of like,
Yeah, I get it.
I can
do get it.
understand how things can feel like they are coming from an external source or from a source that is like so outside the norm of how we normally make decisions and seem to process that it feels like you need language that speaks to that.
Sure.
But I mean, these people go so far, and like it is so important if you're going to be into like symbolism, mythology, and you really do have to have those two sides of you. Like if you don't have like the grounded skeptic in you as well as the mystic, then you can easily, like how the line between like mystic and schizophrenic can so easily be. Maybe that's a bad example because that's like an actual mental condition.
I think it, but it's sort of like delusional or
yeah, like a mystic does have to be
ungrounded.
very careful not to just to completely lose grounding and fly away. And so that's why I feel like so much of the language they use is like obfuscating necessary truths. Like, yeah. Should we just keep watching?
Yeah.
Why were we even talking about that? Oh, because he got the prompting to go on Raya.
Yeah.
Like the way he tells the story, I'm like, I get why he would feel like that was a prompting, because it's like something he doesn't normally do. He doesn't normally get on Raya at the gym, but something in him just told him to. And then because he did it that day, he met this woman who, it is kind of remarkable that he found this woman who's like so willing to be in this dynamic and is like so these two coded already. It's kind of wild.
Love is magical.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
There are forces we don't understand in the universe. That's real.
And that's why I do think you should follow your horniness and open up the app when the gym is understimulating. See who else is around and ask them out.
I've said it already, I think, but I just wish these people would just learn to talk in more plain terms, because I think they would, it's like they take it to the most spiritualized language possible. And I'm like, but what would you learn if you did the opposite? What if you really pared it all down to just like, I wanted to check Raya in the gym, blah, blah, blah. You know, I just think there's like a whole, you've gone so far on this side of the spectrum. I feel like there's probably a lot of opportunity in like.
It is fun when you are in love or the initial stages of romance to like really literally romanticize everything that's happening, and again noticing those like synchronicities or the weird things that brought you together.
I had
or the
a bunch
weird
of
coincidences.
synchronicities in meeting Jared, including a dating app one that like was kind of crazy.
Yeah, same with me meeting Ash. We had the same haircut.
Yeah, what are the chances?
Interrupting my workout, but that's a low cost. To ignore God at that point to finish your workout would be absurd. So I open it up first.
But then like, how do you distinguish between God in every moment? You know, it's like, God wants me to eat ice cream right now. God wants me to open up Grindr right now. God wants me to take out my neighbor's you know, it's like, it's all, if you're saying all these desires and things are all externalized and God wills everything and God is in control of everything, then you can't, anyway.
And people have different levels of scrupulosity as well. So it's like, maybe he's not someone with as much of a tendency. Well, he kind of seems like he is, but like, for some people, it's going to be like profoundly unhelpful to have this kind of framework, because it's just going to lend itself to like, is that God? Is that God? Yeah. You know, like Mormonism is classic. Like, is it God? Is it Satan? And I feel like these guys kind of have that same thing in their brains of like, this is either God or Satan. It's just like not quite that framework. And it's like parts work so important. There is a nod to parts in this, but.
Picture pops up. I'm like, nope, that's not it. Click one time. And there's Alana. And I'm like, and I just get this kind of like chills. And I'm like, fuck.
I just knew deep within my loins that she was to be my baby mama.
He hasn't got the revelation to impregnate 2 women yet, only that God wants him to be polyamorous.
Wow.
I sent her this message on that. And the message is something like, hey, like this is going to sound super woo-woo. And I totally understand if you think I'm like a crazy person, but I got a message from Spirit and it said I would meet somebody right at this specific time on this app. And so
I just think if it is from Spirit, you don't need to bring up that it is.
Yeah.
Like, and that's again, she's a much younger woman. He has a lot more power and influence. He's 44 and famous.
It's
and
giving it BYU.
Like my friend Kelly, who introduced me to this whole drama, she has 200 people on Instagram that follow him. Like I told Tana to check, you have like 40 something, I have like 20 something. But what I'm saying is like this man has impact. Like he's a big deal. And so if you're just like a young model who's a lot younger and you're getting a message from this guy who's really heralded as like a spiritual leader, being like,
God
hey,
told me that
God
we need to
like
date.
low-key told me that we should get together. It's just interesting.
How's that for radical honesty?
Yeah, I mean, he was being honest.
God.
And he did seem to have some awareness about how crazy it sounded, but I'm just like, I just think if it was meant to be, you didn't have to bring up
Did
this.
God tell her too?
We'll see.
And so I'm just messaging you, you know, all good either way. You know, I was kind of embarrassed. And then she hits me back real fast and says, woo woo. That's the place that I live and love. And I was like,
so I'm kind of in Miami in this limbo place, just kind of not really knowing what I'm going to do or what's next, and feeling anxious and leaving what I had done for most of my life as a career and feeling that there was something more, but not knowing how that was going to unfold.
Largely a model.
Yeah, modeling mostly. And
a new career is being in this public throuple, I guess.
just feeling like that was completed. I wanted to do something more. And just not not really honestly being in kind of a place of being really lost.
Also, just an interesting piece of data. I would be a lot more comfortable with this if he had met this much younger woman.
An autonomous, developed in a good place.
Yeah, who was like, I felt like my life was really together. I was just looking for connection, you know.
Met an equal partner who's
Instead of like every area of my life was up for debate. I mean, that's why people in their late teens are most likely to join cults, for example, because that's a time in your life where nothing's really come together yet. You don't have this like full picture of your life. So you're a lot more vulnerable to hopping on board with other people's stories.
Yeah, looking for answers and people who have things figured out more than you. And
you can see you can start to see how like all of the potential signs of this being really problematic are there, which whether or not he's aware of it, you know, it's not like I'm like assuming he's being nefarious. Like he comes across as like pretty, he's like grandiose, but still earnest, you know, and genuine, and apparently has some kind of self-awareness about how crazy his messages were. But it's like, yeah, like the fact that this woman that you're imminently going to get a revelation you need to impregnate was extremely lost in life and untethered to anything else when you met her, not a great sign.
Again, like yellow orange flag.
Yeah. So he talks about them all meeting, but I cut all that out because again, they just talk in such circles.
If he can't invoke God in sliding in someone's DMs, like how is he in an argument? He's like, babe, God didn't really tell me that. That's not what Spirit's saying to me right now. Like,
yeah,
that would suck. That's the problem with exteriorizing things.
Exactly.
Is that when it comes, down to it, it's like you have to deal with your shit, and your shit is yours to carry and to. Yeah.
Like I would absolutely, if I'm talking to you about something going on in my life, I could easily be like, yeah, and I just felt like there was this message from above. That's probably not how I would say it, but that's fine to sort of talk like that when you're sort of talking to friends. But I'm like, I don't think you should be invoking stuff like that in relationships. Like it shouldn't be like, God told me this about our friendship. Like that's just weird. Yeah. Like you can speak for yourself. Like I'm just feeling called to this thing that's new and different, and I can't really make sense of why I feel so called to it. Like, fine, do what you want.
He's literally giving return missionary at BYU who's like,
Spirit told me to marry you.
Literally.
Even teachers at BYU Idaho had the wherewithal to tell men to stop doing that. Yeah. And they told people to not wait to get married until graduating college because that was selfish. So the bar was on the ground. So we're now jumping forward a little bit to his second date with Alana.
For our second date, we share with Alana that Vailana and I had been developing.
It's Vailana and Alana?
I know, just a coincidence.
Wow.
What we really believe is a lineage medicine practice that we call the God Bomb. And there's been many people who've come on here and shared their experiences with the God Bomb, from, Layla, who's shared it, to, Shaman Jen and Valko, who's shared it, and many people have shared it. And we were in the developing of this, and we let you know, we're like, hey, we have this particular type of ceremony. It's quite intense, but it's really safe, and we'll be there with you.
So second date, and they're already inviting her to participate in a ceremony.
A psychedelic ceremony called God Bomb?
Exactly.
I just don't know about this.
It's giving the temple endowment in Mormonism when Joseph Smith's like bringing men in and getting them on board with his polygamy. So he's like, do you want to do this secret ceremony that you can't know anything about in advance? This was kind of the same vibe. I'm like, if you're involving psychedelics in it as well, God, the potential to be shaping other people's psyches is just crazy.
Wild.
It's quite intense, but it's really safe, and we'll be there with you, to guide you through this process. And you're like, yeah.
But it's like, it shouldn't feel that safe to do a really intense psychedelic ceremony with people you just met. Yeah.
I mean, people probably have done it and had wonderful experiences.
Sure.
And some people are like into that as kind of a lifestyle. Kudos to them. But yeah, just more little orange, yellow flags. It's
all yellow flags all the way down. Yeah.
Let's go. And we're like, really? For sure?
Wow, she really trusts.
I was like, for sure? Really?
Like, we're good and we deserve the trust, but like, you also just met I know we're great, but.
Yeah. So like, good read of character.
It's like even they're expressing surprise that she was so quick to get on board with this. So again, just to recap, we've got this girl who's completely lost in life, who is immediately willing to do something very intense and unknown. And like, I'm all for, say yes to what calls to you. Like, that's not necessarily wrong, but it's just interesting.
Character in that, and good discretion. And so you show up.
They're like, yeah, that was fine because like we're safe. But it's like, would she have said yes to people who weren't? Also, Are you? I don't know if you are, but like, even assuming you are, like, could it potentially suggest something else?
Was Mark there?
Oh God, if Mark was there.
And so you show up, for ceremony. It's not a ceremony that you're familiar with. And, the purpose of this isn't to describe that ceremony. There'll be many other chances to do that.
So Mormon temple, like not a ceremony you're familiar with. You don't know till you're already thrown in it, and there's people around that have more like power and influence than you, and that you want to impress.
I remember you having like a, thank God, like almost like somebody can really see me. And there's so many more details we don't have to get into, but it was like almost like my experience of the afterglow of that process was like a kind of at home feeling, of feeling like really deeply seen in a way that almost felt like you've been looking for.
I don't like that.
She's lost. She's never truly felt seen before. Now you're doing psychedelics with this new couple who love your vibe.
Going into it, I hadn't ever really experienced. I had some experiences with medicine, but nothing like on this level. And
She did mushrooms with friends.
Yeah, she's never done this amount of psychedelics before.
I just remember dropping in and being like, oh, this is a real. Like, this is like, I just remember kind of being like, oh, this is real. And like, no fear, but just like, okay, like, wow.
And then we started tiptoeing into the erotic intimacy. And I kind of embarrassingly tiptoeing.
I think this is after the ceremony at this point. Not like during it.
How soon after?
Not that soon. Not that soon after.
Actually moving real slow. So slow that we laugh at it now. It was just like, we had, I think, so much just respect for your purity.
So this is an uncomfortable part of the episode for me. Him and Mark constantly reference this younger girl's purity. So her energy throughout this whole episode is very just like, I'm just like at peace with all things. And like, there is this kind of, she's kind of taking on like a real angelic persona, Feels like she has to be this like perfect, pure angel younger woman who's just down to ride all the different dramas that this is bringing up in these people's marriage, which she's stepping into. Like, they've already been constructing this whole world before she enters the picture, and her job is just
already dropping the God bomb on others.
Yeah. Her job is just to seamlessly blend in to this thing that's already like way predates her, and it seems like she does that well, but that kind of worries me in a young woman, that you just like immediately meet these people and you just say yes to everything and it's all fine and you have no fear.
I can't believe they've radically transformed the act of love bombing. It's now a new evolution, and it's called God bombing.
Holy
Do it to someone you
shit.
just meet.
I receive a message as clear as any message I've ever received, and it felt to me coming through the voice of Isis. She didn't announce herself, but that was
So now we've jumped to Egypt. They're all in Egypt together.
Second, third
Again,
date.
This is probably like third or fourth, yeah. Yep, and now this is where we get
ISIS is coming in clear.
the goddess Isis. So this is kind of the big moment. This is where it all kicks off.
Oh my God. See, I'm like, you can have your little friends in there. The brain is such a creative little playwright, and I sure do love it. I love all the voices
Your
in there.
subconscious is a little freak, and
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
love the little show it's putting on there. Even the little nefarious characters or the underdeveloped ones who are always screaming, throwing tantrums or whatever. We love them all. Love all those parts, right?
Yep.
But if you're
Love
like,
our parts.
this one part, who's a god, actually is sending me messages and I'm just letting them drive the ship. That is just really worrisome.
Yeah.
coming through the voice of Isis. She didn't announce herself, but that was implicit in my understanding, in this almost telekinetic understanding. And it says, you need to have children with both of them.
Lock this down.
Honestly.
Fucking get them for life.
How much
Isis
like-
wouldn't speak English. You don't know what Isis... Like, what are you talking about?
Telekinesis, Tanner.
Okay, great.
There's just so much to be said about like needing a desire to come from a deity rather than just like, how about you in that moment? Maybe a desire that was previously unknown to you that exists within you to impregnate two women reared its head. And for some reason, the setting made you feel like it was like sanctified in some way that it hadn't been before.
Yeah.
I just think not being able to step down, it's fine that that's your experience in the moment, but like never after the fact, taking it back to like that grounded, more science-backed place. I just think that's so risky.
I've seen deities on trips and I've never been like, oh, by the way, Quetzalcoatl really wants us to do hand stuff tonight. Like,
I was reading this Substack article that I think I'll probably link in the description box because it's so good. It was called Your Subconscious is a Little Freak, and it was about this. We talked about it in our live stream the other day, but she wrote about how like if he had felt like this desire just came from within him, would that make him want to do it less?
Yeah.
Would you not see it as holy unless it came from this external deity? Well, then what does that say about it? Like,
Yeah.
you need it to be sanctified by this mythical creature
Yeah.
for it to feel okay.
And it can be totally cool that you felt that really strong in the temple. You like had obviously a very personal spiritual experience with it.
Sounds like you're doing a lot of drugs, so you're very kind of, you've got a malleable psyche.
Maybe you need to chill on the God bomb a little.
Yeah, you don't want to be God bombing every week.
First God bomb, then the laundry, all right?
Yeah, first the God bomb, then the laundry. So real.
And I go, excuse me? Like, what?
Every man that is ever commanded by a deity to practice polygamy or polyamory, which happens constantly, there's a reason Mark mentioned Joseph Smith, every man in his telling of the story says, when I first got the revelation, I was like, what? That's out of left field. I don't want to do this. Joseph Smith would write about how, like, we were taught in Mormonism that it was like heartbreaking for him to get this revelation, even though it's like, well, it seems like you were practicing it before the revelation. Yes. So it doesn't seem like it's that heartbreaking. But like, it's just so classic. Again, it's kind of like the whole, like, why are you calling it monogamy if there's no shame there? It's like, why are you having to assign this like spiritual narrative to it? I mean, I believe that he is probably authentically assigning it. Like, there's just no separation between his mysticism and reality to him.
Yeah, we can be shocked by the content of our own thoughts and the sudden awarenesses that strike us in a unforeseen moment. But I'm so sick of this shtick.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I'm just the wee helpless little cult leader who happened. Oh my God, I need to sleep with this much younger woman now. I need to impregnate both of them so I can lock them in for life. What, Isis? What is that thou hast asked of me at this moment?
One way or another, he is acting in like a cult leader type role in that he has like enormous influence over a spiritual community. So it's just so textbook and it's like absurd for us all to, like, I'm like, does he know that? Does he know that every spiritual leader that ever gets a revelation to marry kids or take other wives is always like, oh man, I don't wanna.
I'm surprised Mark didn't list that in his defense to Dr.
I
Phil.
know.
He's like, I actually did get a revelation from Isis and Elohim. They were in cahoots. This was a collab they dropped on me, and I was like, what?
Well, that's what I think is kind of nefarious, well, very nefarious about Mark, is I'm like, I feel like Aubrey is like more genuine, like even though I think he's like misguided in certain ways, but I feel like Mark has this genuine interest in like, oh, if I can redeem this other man, that like it's all just playing into like Mark seems to think that men should just be able to do whatever they want sexually and then just spiritualize it and then it's fine. And like, I don't know. I've said it before and I say it again, I hate Mark.
I think we can all agree Mark sucks.
And then the voice repeated itself. And I go, what? Like, I was just like, my heart sank into my belly and I was...
Did it?
No, Isis, you know I hate sex.
Not the two hotties.
I hate putting my penis into a vagina. I literally can't do this. You have asked too much of me, Isis.
So I quietly exit the Holy of Holies and find some place where I could look out at the water and just go like, what the fuck was that? Because I knew that was not the covenant that I had made with Vi.
Why do I feel like I'm in Mormon fast and testimony meeting? The covenant that you made,
Humans are not as original as we like to think. Everything is just recycled patterns and archetypes.
Okay, how soon does he get allegations and then become a Christian mystic?
This is what I'm very curious about. I'm like, where the fuck is this story going to go from? Because neither of these women are currently pregnant. Spoiler alert.
They're not?
Like, no, not
What
yet.
happens when you disobey the edicts of Isis?
Well, it sounds like they're like on the path to that happening, but they don't really talk about
he
that
does hate
aspect.
putting his penis in, so it's
Yeah,
probably
'cause
allowed
he
to like
hates
set
it.
himself up.
The pregnancy piece, they don't really, yeah. But it's just so interesting because it's like if I had a thought that felt like, I don't know, kind of like from another source that popped into my brain and then I was like, oh God, I really don't want to do that, then I wouldn't feel pressure to do it.
Yeah. Unless it was just like, oh, that was if I were to encounter something like that, it'd be like, oh, there was like bubbling from the well of the unconscious that came out in this moment and I need to like pay attention or analyze that and like take stock. And maybe there's a way that needs to be integrated into my life.
Especially because it sounds like you're in a setting that you have a pre-existing belief is very, very holy. So it's like, what desire is so, do you feel like is so unallowed within you that you need to be in the holy of holies before it can become
Pregnancy.
Like, yeah, it's like, sounds like that was a desire that had been lurking in him that, again, it feels very textbook with this archetype of man. And when he was in a holy enough place, suddenly he felt able to like grant that permission to himself. But I just hate this whole shtick of like, but I don't wanna. It's like, we obviously do. And I just feel like for me in my life, when things are like aligned, when things feel like meant to be, because all the pieces are just coming together in a way where it's almost just like, there's no way I'm not going to do this because it's just so obviously the right thing to do. It doesn't feel like that. You know, things can feel like challenging to do. But the way he's describing it is just like, my heart sank in my stomach and I just really didn't want to. And Joseph Smith really didn't want to take other wives. It's like, come on.
That brought her in. That was not when I got down on my knee and proposed. That was not part of the plan.
At first, when you shared that with me, I felt pretty calm and collected and was able to like hold it from a place. But the more that our conversation continued, you know, like it was bringing up that piece of me that feels like, you know, like I always get like hit out of left field just like as soon as I feel safe.
This is what really devastates. Yeah, this is like so... Because she talked about that before, like this has been a pattern in her life. And she described that throughout their whole relationship, it's just constantly feeling like the rug's pulled out from under her. And I just don't think that's how a relationship should have growth and challenge, but I just don't think that sounds ideal to me. Also, if all these different gods and goddesses are constantly giving these revelations to men to take other wives, I'm like, why do these gods, goddesses never give the same revelation to the wife at the same time?
I know.
If Isis could have given him that revelation in the temple, give it to her at the same time.
Literally, that's
give
what
it
I'm
to
saying.
Emma Smith at the same time. It's never that. It's always the man insisting, like, no, I had a revelation from God. And the women just having to find a way to become okay with it.
Yeah, it's like, well, if Isis said it in the Holy of Holies, then who am I to have any feelings about it as a totally equal partner in this relationship?
And it's like, she seems like someone who's pretty willing to get on board with the spiritual stuff. You know, I feel like if she received a genuine download from a deity, she'd be pretty willing to go with it. Because, I mean, she was willing to go with a secondhand account. So it's like, couldn't you have just given her that? Like, the women just never get anything. And you never, I mean, actually... maybe Till Swan, but it's like you just don't hear the same from female religious leaders.
Yeah.
Being like, God commanded me to marry little boys or take other husbands.
Yeah,
It's like,
different mechanism going on there. And crazy that it's about her.
I know.
And somebody else.
I
like,
know. But they don't
wild.
get the revelation, only ever the man.
Wild. And like her body.
Like there's something else. And so it was a lot of that woundedness around like, this always fucking happens. And like, I've been so open in the blessing and trusting. And then like the thing that I literally was the most afraid of.
He wants to have a family with somebody else.
It's like, there's probably a reason you were afraid of it. Whether she meant specifically like the pregnancy thing or just like that he was eventually going to ask for more than what she had currently signed on to and wrestled with so much to even get to that point. It's like, there's a reason you had that fear, probably.
It's good to be in a relationship where everything can be on the table and you can be perfectly honest. But that doesn't mean you have to accept all like those terms.
Yeah.
Just
Especially
because
when it's
they're on the
your
table.
body. Like it's not. Oh.
Like you can be like, I've heard your truth and I see you in your truth and I respect those desires and I don't have to sign up for it. Like it's not doing well in my body. I don't spend the majority of time or whatever feeling good about that.
He's getting a revelation that these two women need to spend
pregnant.
9 months growing a child in their bodies and then birth that child and then mother that child for 18 years. Like it's just crazy.
And this is like, you know, I had a little bit of hesitancy about this podcast just because it's exposing the, you know, the most vulnerable part of my journey. And, you know,
both of these women do a lot of work with the help of Mark, a lot of help from Mark to make sure that they paint this as like, we've all been so nourished from this. We've all grown so much. We're all so much more spiritually evolved because of this. But I'm just like, is this not the raw truth? Like, if you're talking about radical honesty, if she can still summon this amount of tears when, like, that's like,
it's
so
just right there
real.
under the surface.
This is like the realest moment in the podcast to me. I'm like, if you are truly in the place that you paint for the rest of the episode, which is like, this is all just so amazing. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm like, I mean, I know you can have like tears reflecting on a time that was hard for you, but it just feels so potent in her in this moment, like the grief. And even saying like I guarantee her saying I had a little bit of hesitancy about this podcast. It was probably a lot of hesitancy.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's the smallest way she can say it and she has to kind of say it in the smallest
more
way.
yellow flags of like, oh, it wasn't like, oh, we've been through this wonderful thing and I'm so excited to talk about this. It's like,
it's not like, oh, and at the time it was so hard. I was in the trenches. Like, no, the tears are like right there.
It's like still there. It feels like we're still in a trench.
Yeah.
I had a really difficult day, as you can imagine. And
once we kind of, both of us are very dramatic, so we went like...
It's like, babe, you need a love bomb right now. Let's. We're not going to keep talking. You need a God bomb. You GB? You down for a GB?
I have a little thing on my ring, but I like tried to like pull off my ring and I couldn't pull it off, and then that...
Hate when that happens. You're trying to get the ring off and...
Shut up, Mark.
Mark, get the fuck out of here. No one fucking asked you.
Straight to jail, Mark.
I mean, it was full drama.
I almost threw myself
He
in the Nile.
threw himself in the Nile. Like,
It was
the people
dramatic.
next door, I'm just like, Jesus Christ.
That was me.
Yeah.
I almost threw myself in the Nile.
Oh, poor baby.
It's Brigham Young. Like, I looked at the person in the grave and wished that I were him rather than take another wife.
Really? Did Brigham say that?
Yeah. 50 wives later.
But, kind of coming down from like...
Imagine if Joseph Smith had a podcast.
I know. That's what is fast. I'm like, you don't often get such a sort of modern day example of something that has been happening for thousands of years. This is a thing that men do. This is the story they always spin. And also women throughout history have bought it. Like Emma Smith ultimately bought it, as much as she wrestled with it. Or even some of Joseph's child brides, like Helen Mar Kimball, the 14-year-old, like the Mormons love bringing up that like she went to her grave defending this polygamy. And it's like, that doesn't make it not grooming though.
Yeah.
I know this isn't grooming per se, but.
Right. Because it's still like they benefit from the status.
Yep.
And they benefit.
They want to believe that their suffering has meaning, which is a big theme in this. They're going to talk about that more as the episode goes on, but it's just like this idea that like sacrifice and suffering is like evolution and consciousness. And
Why is it so Mormon polygamy?
Yep. There's a reason that that's why I'm like, Mark is pure fucking evil, because it's like he knows enough to see the parallels with Mormon polygamy. That's why he mentions it right off the bat. Like Mark is the person who seems to see what this could look like, and then he's like, and here's why it's not that.
Yeah.
Here's a word salad to convince you that it's not that. And it's like, oh.
The big energy, like I feel like there's so many dimensions of myself. There's like my wounded self, the part of my imprinting and programming and fear and everything that I've been through in my life that's like one dimension of me. But I also have a really deep access to seeing above that. And so a lot of times, especially throughout this relationship, it feels like this tear between the two of like me trying to bridge them together. But when I could lift myself out of my own personal fears and ego and all of the things, like there was a part of me that was reflecting that could see the beauty of that.
I don't know that it's a good sign when you have to like completely kill your ego to be okay being in the relationship that you're in, or even just this imagery of like, this is like the down low part of me, instead of just like instead of like all the parts just kind of like relating to each other in kind of this interconnected web. And like, you don't always want the wounded part being the one driving your life, but it's like, do you want this part of you driving your life? Either the part of you that has to completely surrender everything that feels like natural and comfortable to you, like
Constantly.
Again, all for growth, but it just
It's okay to do that. It's like every relationship will stretch you and strain you.
Yeah, but she's describing a really intense cognitive dissonance, which again, like can be normal with polyamory, but it sounds like you're honestly describing like kind of a severance rather than like an integration of all these parts of you. Also, if we have all these parts within us, it shouldn't be like only this one part at the very tippy top that wants to be in the honestly, it shouldn't only be your ISIS part that wants this.
It's interesting with the psychedelic mix in here, because the like ego dissolving effects of psychedelics are really wonderful, because they show you the illusion of the ego. And for some people, especially maybe newer to those experiences, can feel like a desire to, or an impression of being more egoless in the world. And often what that actually translates to is being boundaryless, both for yourself and for others. And especially if someone who, has been living in like a chaotic, struggle-filled life, or has only had bad relationships, and now they're like, oh, the best thing I can be is egoless and just say, yes, universe, yes, God, yes, man who is kind of the spokesperson for God, literally telling me what ISIS is wanting us to do. Like,
just so many signs of like, I don't know that spiritual abuse is the right word. It's a tough one. Like because intention is always hazy. And like, again, these are three people who all seem to like buy what they're all selling. But it's like at the end of the day, he is the one selling what you're all buying.
It was also surprising to me in a lot of ways. And it was also very much probably the first like extremely mystical moment of this path, because
like, what does it mean to call a moment mystical?
Yeah.
Like, what, a moment where like normal reason and logic goes out the window? I can see where there's a place for that, but I'm like, is it this? Is this the right place for something like that, you know?
Yeah, what's her experience?
Within the previous month to that trip, I had 2 experiences with friends who, for me, are people who I like really honor their channel and like what they see in their reflection. And they didn't know that we were kind of dancing in any kind of like romantic context. I hadn't shared that with them yet. And both of them had shared that they had had some kind of vision of me and Aubrey having children. And at that time, I kind of dismissed them because, you know, in my mind, one, that was not a possibility, and I was tracking.
So that's like another thing where like that is pretty wild that 2 of her friends had a vision. I was like, who are your friends?
Yeah.
But it's not. But it's also like so within the realm of what men like. Like if they know, they obviously know who he is, even if they don't know that she's dancing in a romantic context with him. Like he's exactly the type of guy that wants to impregnate multiple women.
Yeah.
Like he's the archetype of like the Andrew Huberman, the Elon Musk, whoever.
And maybe there's a case to be made about a lot of women wanting to be locked down and have a baby.
And a case to be made for maybe like they are going to both get pregnant by him. And as time is not linear, it's all like exists as one. It's like it's kind of already happened. So they kind of did get some kind of weird premonition. Who knows?
Who knows?
Either way, there's a lot of women relying on other people's spiritual revelations in this circumstance.
How, you know, like my brain could see you as like, you know, the divine masculine in this example. And so it would wanted to, you know, make this context. And so I hadn't really tracked those super clearly. And then when you brought this to me, it was kind of the moment of being like, okay, like
they don't say anything in a normal way. Like she was like, I hadn't quite tracked that. Like, what you just hadn't like thought much about the fact that your friends said.
And I was tracking how, you know, like my brain could see you as like, you know, the divine masculine in this example. And so it would wanted to, you know, make this context. And so
what does that mean? So I wanted to make it what?
I don't like it.
No,
I don't
me
like
neither.
the divine masculine. The divine masculine's been a shit show for the last few thousand years, if you haven't noticed.
But it came through a female goddess.
You can
so
just
it's
like
okay.
him. You can just want to have kids. You can just think he's a good guy.
I don't know that she does want to have kids. We'll see. Let's find out.
Hadn't really tracked those super clearly.
It's like I'm crunching the spiritual numbers. I'm doing that celestial calculus, and I'm seeing that there may be aspects of divine masculinity in him, and so I'm going to try to maybe see if I'm open to making contact. It's like, are you just word soliding so you don't have to analyze your
like,
desires?
What?
Like,
What are you saying?
She's like, yeah, I guess on paper when you do all this spirit math.
But it's like the reason that it's so problematic when people get into such specific over spiritualized language is it naturally isolates them from other perspectives. Because it's like she presumably has learned a lot of this language style from being in this throuple, but probably largely informed by Mark. An outsider wouldn't be able to talk about it in the same way that they would. You know what I mean? It's just like silos them.
I'm going to have to hit you with a point of process and negate some of what you've been said with an official disclosure. Yeah,
I'm not tracking the divine masculine in you right now, so it's just not really.
Well, you're obviously not attuned. Your channel isn't attuned to ISIS.
And when you brought this to me, it was kind of the moment of being like, okay, like maybe there's something here that's tied to my destiny.
As everything progressed into, you know, this isn't just about an experience that we're having together, you know, which was the place of comfort that I, you know, found in our exploration. But now there is a desire for there to be their own intimacy where I'm not there, which was another really huge death for me and coming up to a really, you know, big place of my fear, which ultimately, you know, ensued into like a breaking point in our relationship of like, can we make it through this? Like, I mean, I think that's important to note is like it reached a total breaking point where we actually spent 3 months apart. It has been the greatest liberator for me of everything that I've always been afraid of everything that I've been trying to control so that I could feel more safety of, you know, all the wounds that I've had with the feminine. It's like, no, lean in more, love more, be open more, soften more.
Again, I can see like the potential psychic benefit of just like completely facing your worst fears.
Yeah.
But I don't think that means that you need to like live in that forever, you know?
Yeah.
Like there would be probably freedom for me if I like could work my way up to holding a toad. but do I need to spend my life holding that toad? No. It's like once I've been like, yeah, I can hold a toad. It's like, but do I want to spend my life holding a toad? No.
No.
But if like thought of toads is like, which it has crippled me throughout my life, then yeah, it would feel very freeing to get to a point where I could hold one.
And Aubrey has said this so many times, like when we're in conflict, you're there for both of us. Like you're such a stand for our relationship. You have shown over and over and over, like you're not here to take anything from me.
See that again, it's like, that's a nice sentiment that like the girl in her 20s is always there for you guys in your 40s when you're in conflict. But it also, to me, it like has a lot of the energy of someone who like grew up with a parent who was an addict or something. It's not always a healthy sign when someone is like that available to be triangulated. I mean, literally triangulated.
Yeah, maybe y'all need a therapist and it's not Mark.
I know but that's the thing. Mark's the only one that can talk in their language at this point. So Mark's the only therapist they can have. I just think there's a reason that people like Mark, Keith Raniere, whoever the guy is, have their own lingo.
There's no part of you that doesn't want me to be in this picture because you desire, you know, like there's no conflict in you. You're just such a stand for our relationship.
See, like, what does it mean to say that like there's no conflict in this like new girl that they keep describing as pure? It's like, it sounds like she just doesn't ever have any contrary opinions or.
Yeah, and maybe she is more polyamory oriented at this point in her life, where it's like easy for her to just appreciate both of them without doesn't feel the same level of like threat or.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's like, for her, it's like, oh, these two like, you know, high up people with a lot of influence who are both considered like gorgeous and amazing and inspiring. Like they both want me. I'm their shiny new toy. Like that's like the appeal of a unicorn person like her, right? Like she's getting to feel adored because they are really putting her up on a pedestal. How much is she gonna be like loved and valued for who she is when she stops playing the perfect third piece in this triangle that they're like wanting to create?
Yeah, what happens when she matures and realizes that she is also an autonomous individual that can make requests in the relationship or can be pursuing things, you know, outside of that dynamic. Because
this is also like still a very new thing, and well, I'll keep playing.
The double babies is so interesting.
The double babies, but I wonder if it's because it's like, well, I can't just get the new girl pregnant. So I gotta get them both pregnant.
It's a BOGO.
It's like he's already landed his wife, so. But also these men do seem to like planting their seed in.
They do. Yeah, the Elon Musk of it all.
I'm a little bit worried about how compliant she seems to be, is basically my point.
I think having this experience of just knowing what truth feels like in my body and knowing and that never leaving, you know, within the witnessing of the difficulty and like feeling both of you so deeply and my own, you know, struggles of like, am I a disruptor? Is there, you know, like, and never not being clear in my intention, but
classic
just also the fear
struggle.
of, will I be received in what the true intention is? Because I could see the ease of assuming, or especially when you have other patterns from the past, like there were so many places where that could have unfolded, and to just feel like I got to witness you continually leaning in and receiving me truthfully and like feeling the truth of my intention and choosing to trust the truth of my intention, I think really allowed for us to deepen and for that truth to stay alive within all of us and for us to be able to share in that space of the unknown, but know that we were in it together. And obviously not without its challenges and, you know, very scary moments and like all of our own individual fears. And there's been so many places within all of us, I think, that we've had to die to, or ideas or expectations, and really just knowing that like, oh, we're moving through this together, and this is actually something that is forging like a deeper bond within all of us.
See why I like her. She seems really smart and articulate. And
well, she talks the talk, doesn't she?
Yeah.
But again, can't stress enough how this was this guy's vision. These are not three people that all came to the throuple table together with the same intentions.
Yeah. Where do babies come from? Well, when a man is in communion with Isis.
There's been many, many private moments that I've had with Alana where Vailana and I were in some form of conflict, and we're in the tragic, all things are on the table. There's questions. And to understand that from a selfish perspective, right? The idea of us being able to share a bed every night. I mean, you have strong sugar glider energy. Like you really like a good cuddle. Like really, really do.
Sugar glider.
What is a sugar glider?
A sugar glider is a delightful little marsupial.
Oh.
Kind of like a flying squirrel. They jump.
Okay.
They're really precious and really social animals. I think in this context, it's sugar is kind of like a sugar baby, like sugar, a little sugar, a little.
But
They're physical. They fuck. They cuddle. And he's a sugar daddy. Look at him. He's a successful alpha spirit bro.
All of the selfish desire would be to say, like, yeah, maybe it's not going to work with Vi. But for you to have never once taken that road or even hinted at it is like a shocking testament to a purity that is, it's really like transcendent of what.
Like, is it purity, or is it like she wouldn't really feel comfortable saying like, yeah, maybe you and your wife won't work out in this situation that she's just come into? Like, it really does make me uncomfortable, the repeated insistence on her purity.
I've known in the world, and that purity that is a part of your essential quality. I was just talking with Mark about this in the car, is like people who, if you don't have an experience of purity, you don't know what you're fighting for in the world.
What that mean?
If you don't have a sense of purity, you don't know what you're fighting for in the world.
Define purity. Mark, even. Mark, we'd love to hear from you at this stage.
Can we get Jordan Peterson in here?
The goodness and purity that you've maintained through this process is like, it's really been absolutely stunning and exceptional. And
I'm also assuming there's got to be some financial thing here as well. Like, because
he's a sugar daddy. I mean,
I don't think she did say she modeled, so it's hard to know. But like, if she was quitting modeling, it's like, I don't know that she would have the income to be like jetting off to Egypt and stuff. Like, it seems like they are now probably financing her life.
Yeah.
Just one piece.
And been such a blessing. And it's such a blessing to now be able to share you on this world stage as an archetype, and not to reduce you to a single archetype, but the archetype of purity.
The archetype
Not to reduce you, but to reduce you.
That is so weird.
It's giving like our relationship needed a redeemer.
Yeah. The archetype of purity?
Like what? In what way?
Why?
Why is your wife not pure?
Probably in her guilelessness, that she is not there to break up the relationship. She is there to respect what's going on and contribute to it.
You'd have to be in that situation. These people are famous.
Weird way of expressing it.
Yeah. Or is it like the purity is just that, like, again, you're like unblemished by this relationship so far because it's new.
Yeah.
And like
you're not bogged down by her interpersonal
and
history.
she's still pure in their minds because it's like she's just been this perfect little sugar glider so far.
She's so pure, doesn't even have a prefrontal cortex yet.
She doesn't even have opinions outside of the throuple. It's amazing. She's so pure.
There's just something so potent about that, which was also an aspect of this that was like, it evokes something that's very important, I think, particularly in the masculine. It's like in
you, is that what you mean?
Is what evokes the warrior, the protector, the one that says, this world, I'm willing to die for this world.
Men in their middle age often crave younger women because they want contact again with that like innocence, that naivety, that playfulness, that energy, that sugar glider, whatever. But in like, instead of just like recognizing that, it's like that archetype of purity really just like activates a lot in the masculine. It's like, you're just an older guy who just wants to feel young again, honestly. Yeah. It's fine, it's not wrong, but like, God, all of this dressing. Okay, unfortunately, we do have to quickly go back to Mark.
No one here needs rescuing.
Shut up, Mark.
You've said nothing of value.
I'm going to cut you off right there, Mark. Shut up.
I'm going to stop you right there. That's a felony, Mark.
No one here needs rescuing. Let's just relax everyone at home.
Yeah, please.
Once again, I'm like, why do you even need to say that? It's like he has this way of intuiting how this might be viewed, but he is there to make sure. He's there to do narrative
He's the
control.
PR. Yeah, he's the spin doctor.
He's doing live PR.
Yeah. He's literally God bombing us right now.
We are being God bombed by Mark against our consent.
Don't project onto me that I'm not choosing this for myself.
No one reads it.
Please.
Right?
It's okay if you do,
made beautiful.
Okay.
Someone can choose something for themselves and there can be like problematic forces at play that person is not conscious of. Like it's like, yes, you are a grown adult, and just because a person is manipulative doesn't like immediately make you a victim, right? Under our law, because that would just be insane. Like we'd never be able to navigate that. So we have like these hard lines such as like 19-year-old boys shouldn't be sexually active with 13-year-olds. That's just like a hard line. Yeah, you're allowed to consent to manipulation. And it's like whether the word consent is like a bit hazy because it's like...
As is manipulation.
It's like how you... Yeah. But it's like so many relationships run on like degrees of manipulation and dishonesty. And so, yeah, there's no way to regulate that. Like for all intents and purposes, this is a person who's actively choosing this, and we can still feel bad for you because there might be things that you're not seeing. And you're obviously very identified with this one story, but like there's just like a whole world of truth that...
Yeah. I think manipulation is us like covertly trying to meet our needs and desires, and always expressing and experiencing those as God telling us to do something, I think is often a form of manipulation.
Especially when you're the person with the most power and influence and money in the situation.
Yeah.
Which he is.
It's been such a journey of, can I really choose this? Can I really choose this? Because, in a beautiful sound ceremony that we did with Alexandre, I met a part of myself that felt like I could potentially be really happy in just a monogamous relationship where there isn't this shared time and attention and all of these things. And I was sort of overriding that with my will to choose.
Right.
But I actually met that very real part of me. And so I was in this inquiry for a while of, who am I?
So fine to be triggered in polyamory and be like, you know what, monogamy is looking really good right now. I definitely see the upsides.
Also glad she got in contact with the part of her that like didn't want this, but I'm like, girl, you had to do like a sound ceremony to get there. Like, are you that disconnected from yourself because that sounds like that was your immediate reaction to all of this, right? Was the part of you that didn't want it, but you had to like go into ceremony to even feel like you were able to connect with that part of yourself. Like, I think that says something about how this whole spiritual framework is like at play here. I did this ceremony and I connected with this really niche under the surface part of me that just kind of didn't want this and wanted monogamy, the thing that we had like signed up for together for all these years. Like, girl, what?
It was probably bringing her reaction initially, I'm sure, was very conflict heavy. Like the rest of the Egypt trip, probably really tough. They said they spent 3 months apart or whatever. It was probably the first time she was able to feel that without any complexity, without any shame, without any it was just like, oh, there is a part of me there that just doesn't want this.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I'm here in the sound bath. I'm feeling it. I'm noticing that. I'm honoring that part of me.
It just kind of scares me that it seemed like it was like a whole thing just to get to that when it was like right there.
Yeah.
Am I the woman that abandons myself? And it was torturous because it's so not who I am. And I think it's important to speak into the space of like,
beautiful.
You can look at it as me, submitting myself to his desire. But I would love for you to speak to the unique sacrifice.
No,
so she
Mark,
needs
shut
Mark.
up.
She's literally asking Mark. She's like, I'm worried that people listening to this are gonna see me as a woman who self-betrays. And like when I was in that sound ceremony, it was like so painful for me to see myself as potentially a woman that would self-betray to stay with this man. Mark, can you come in and help me out here?
But there's a moment in which, in order to be a hero, to be the hero of my own life, there's a sacrificial act. There's a reciprocity of the sacrificial in all great relationship. And anyone who thinks they can do great relationship without an act of radical sacrifice that's born of love is wrong.
I don't think the radical act of sacrifice is generally, you have to let me impregnate another woman.
Yeah, it's giving the Abrahamic test, which is what was often Joseph Smith's code for the polygamy.
I'm like so open about what people can do with their lives, but I just think life is the best for people and for society when it's like, how about if ISIS needs this throuple with 2 pregnant women to happen. It's like, how about find 2 willing women who already want that? Like, why does it always have to be like a woman completely abandoning everything she wants and knows about herself? And, like, I just think things should come
Constantly
together
triggering her core
through
wounds.
mutual desire. Yeah. Not like having to force this desire out of herself that isn't really
find
there.
a spiritual justification in order to
kill your ego completely before you can even stand it.
Get this higher truth that will allow me to ignore all my experiential conflict.
Not abandonment. I want to make that distinction.
Yeah.
That discernment. You never abandon yourself. But what is right sacrifice? And just for a moment to be kind of mystics, the infinite intimate, God, sacrifices some of the divine in order to bring the world into being. Just ask Jesus on the cross as the nails are going in.
So you're speaking to like the difference between sacrifice and abandonment.
Yeah, it's like the boys are going out Friday night, but I said that I would help my partner's sister move. So I'm going to sacrifice boys' night.
It's just like, what would we say the difference between sacrifice and abandonment would be? I would say it's if you're having to like enter into a ceremony to even meet the part of yourself that doesn't want this, when right off the bat, your initial reaction was, I don't want this. That to me is like there's a reason he's feeling the need to make that distinction. It's like, it's very telling the things that Mark feels the need to defend.
It doesn't seem like a great base for relationships that like one person has to radically change their whole like interior and exterior world in order for it to work.
She just
it always feels better to find people who are like more on your page.
Yeah, exactly. People that already want that.
Just like she knows she doesn't want to lose what she has, so her only choice is to change.
Which is kind of part of choosing in this life. Like, I guess ultimately the truth is that she would rather go through all this than lose him. That's kind of the simple truth of what's happening here. And that's fine. And even you can spiritualize it as much as you need to, but it's like, the truth will sort of prevail in the sense of like, we'll see how that feels for you as time plays out.
Yeah. There's a sacrifice that needs to be made. And if you don't make that sacrifice, you will wind up living together familiarly, but intimacy, aliveness, surprise, and delight will be gone. And once eros collapses, so does ethics.
But why is it always the woman sacrificing in these fucking polyamorous religious situations, you know?
Yeah, it's not like,
what's
in order for him to radically love her, he needs to sacrifice some of his desires and stick to the agreements that he's made.
Like, what's his radical sacrifice here? The only way to keep intimacy alive is to allow
breed
your
a
husband.
second.
He's really making the whole thing seem way worse to me because it's like
this self-sacrifice thing is a bit weird.
Instead of just like, you get to choose. Do you want to like honor this guy that you're with's desires so you can stay with him? Like, you're allowed to choose that. But just the way that Mark's coming in and like, he's like moralizing
he's
it.
Bro-coding.
And he's essentially saying, if you don't do what Aubrey wants, then you'll never have intimacy and passion in your relationship. And it's like, there's absolutely a world where she just maybe wants to be in a monogamous relationship and feel more secure because, you know, she's got all this woundedness from the past. And like, a lot of people do want to be monogamous, and like, that's completely fine. It's like, there's so much from Mark that is making it so clear to these women that if they're not okay with what Aubrey wants, then it's like a spiritual failure.
It says, after all, a radical evolution of relationships and consciousness.
And once eros collapses, so does ethics. So this is the big deal. This is about ethics.
It's literally unethical if you don't let Aubrey impregnate both of you. Like, once eros collapses, so does ethics. Okay, yeah, like when passion dies in a relationship, people can be more inclined to cheat. That's fine to say.
Sure, but eros and ethics have always been at odds, not just like best friend companions.
The grandiosity is just completely insane.
This whole conversation here is about ethics.
It's about ethics.
This whole conversation is about ethics?
I thought she had just been like, this is really hard, and I know that I'm crying and talking about how hard it is,
She's
even to
like,
come on this podcast.
Yes, but what if I told you you'd be a
Mark,
bad person?
Can you explain how I'm not self-sacrificing? And he's like, well, this is literally all about being a good person, and so you're obviously, letting go of your needs and desires because you're a good person.
So scary.
No, that was a really helpful frame that you gave to me as I was sort of wrestling with this piece of me.
So as she's wrestling with this, like,
is she an independent friend with Mark, or is he just like...
No, Mark is just like...
worm-tonguing on the side.
Mark is just like their spiritual teacher to all of them. Yeah, so it's like when she's down bad, Mark is the person she's going to, because that's who her and Aubrey... and this is who Mark's a... Like, you're literally going to a child abuser for advice.
We need to go back to the olden days where you seek spiritual counsel from a gnome living in a little hovel on your property who, does your weeds, cooks little soups, and offers little jesty advice. I'm fully capable of doing that if you want to hire me, Aubrey. This business of we've got a teacher who therapizes all of my relationships to make sure that they're all ethically aligned. Isn't that a Keith Raniere thing too?
Yeah.
You're like...
Or Jody Hildebrandt as well.
Ethical breach. You're experiencing an ethical breach right now.
Jody Hildebrandt language, like they use like distortion the way that Ruby Frankie and Jody did. And I'm just like, of course the fucking spiritual guru that's like guiding you is a man.
Yeah.
Man gets revelation from female goddess. Women involved in revelation don't get anything. Women have to go to man who got revelation and then this other guy to be able to like navigate all this.
This was something when I lied on my back, tortured by this inquiry and asked God, like, what do you want from me? And God said to choose this. So this isn't just my devotion to you. This isn't just my devotion.
Which is really like at the end of the day, that's her psyche saying like, we're too scared to lose him because we're married to him. So just become okay with it.
And to, offer a little grace or whatever, maybe there is an aspect of her that wanted that and was able to like see through that and follow through in that moment. Who knows?
Would be pretty wild. Like, as someone who has never wanted to be impregnated at the same time as a sister wife, like, I'm like, what?
Doesn't every little girl dream of it?
What are the fucking chances that she just like suddenly found that was a lurking desire within her that she actually did want for herself? That you just can't really convince me of that. I'm sorry.
Wonder how he's going to split time. Is he going to get a third girlfriend while they're both pregnant?
There's no world where it ends with these two. There's no world. Men always take a fourth.
This isn't just my devotion to we. This is actually what I am being guided from God, and it is my devotion.
I feel like if men embraced their bisexuality better, faster, stronger, it would just really help reduce a lot of the toxic masculinity that they're spewing into the women around them.
Yeah, but do you really think bisexuality is the problem here?
I think what the problem is that he obviously is like craving multiple partners and intimacy in various forms, and is still approaching them through a very like patriarchal, heteronormative framework. And that if he could just maybe direct some of that energy onto like
towards Mark,
just hooking up to Mark, to just having some like little flings elsewhere that aren't involved. Yeah, I don't know.
It sounds like things are already romantic with Mark.
Yeah.
But I bet if you asked him, like, he doesn't feel attraction to men. So
that's
it's like,
the problem. That's the problem. What is the ayahuasca doing for you?
It's so
it's
sad
like,
when
hey,
men are straight.
You should be a little gay.
And it is my devotion to God. And so even though that there is this piece of me that in some imagined place, I've never actually experienced monogamy. So it's just imagined. Like, there's never been one time.
In my experience, anytime you're using spirituality to be like, so it's actually not this thing that I'm worried it is, me being self-sacrificial and placing the we before me. It's actually this like secret third thing, this higher thing. It's always the thing that you're afraid to say that it is. Time always teaches me that it was that thing. It was that thing all along. And that's not bad. And like, I feel like I get better at like relating to all that as it's happening with age. But I just think it's so easy to be like, I can so clearly see how this could look like this thing. But there's actually something like bigger and more profound. And it's like, it's because you're tapping into the truth that like there is something playing out that needs to play out. So in that sense, there is sort of this like higher purpose to it all, but you're also a lot of the time right in your assessments. You are doing this to maintain the we between you and Aubrey, and that's okay. There's no shame in that. And you need to have this like spiritual narrative to make it possible for you to work through that, because otherwise you couldn't get through it because you're not ready to leave him. So that's kind of your only way through.
Yeah.
Like we just like find what we need to.
We have to intellectualize our way through it, and that's where Mark comes in.
Never actually experienced monogamy. So it's just imagined. Like, there's never been one time that I've actually known that.
That's not a great argument for why you're going to like submit to polyamory that you didn't really want to be a part of. You know, I've never actually even experienced good monogamy. It's like, well, you could.
Yeah.
Don't you want to at least maybe try that? That feels less extreme than the double pregnancy thing.
Whichever other players come into this, field that we're in, this field of erotic mystics, whatever they are, they have to be generative to the whole.
Mm-hmm.
They have
whichever other people we fuck, they have to be generative to the whole. They have to keep the triangle intact. You know how cult leaders will always be like controlling who can sleep with who, and it's like Teal Swan had a thing where like people weren't allowed to have relationships outside the group because like that wouldn't be like that wouldn't keep the structure intact. That would
have to really work in a way that works and synergizes and makes all of us greater.
And is like additive.
Don't bring synergy into the bedroom.
I know.
Leave it in the boardroom.
What disturbs me about that, it's like any other people that these women sleep with need to not affect the triangle. But what I feel like that probably functionally looks like potentially is like he gets to have like some kind of control over who they do or don't sleep with, but he can just get any revelation anytime.
He's
and they
the captain of the field.
Yeah.
The field can invite any kind of erotic mystic it wants.
Yeah.
But the field flowers probably should stay put. Don't go.
Doesn't that worry you though? That mindset of like, because it's having a really grandiose view of the throuple, which I don't like. a throuple is a throuple, no shame in a throuple, but don't make it this. But I just think, yeah, it's like, what if this Alana girl wants to sleep with someone new, but then he can just be like, I just don't think this is additive to our triangle.
Distorting the field.
One of the specific challenges that came up for me was, going to sleep most nights by myself, and just like these pieces of desiring for these moments of life that, attribute to a certain level of intimacy that you do have in more of a normal partnered.
Attribute to a certain level of intimacy that you do have in a normal partner context. I didn't get to do normal stuff like sleep with my boyfriend at night.
No regular intimacy.
And I think that I've seen all of these things as provision and really approaching things from what is this here for me, and not, I think there's like a basis of having to consistently feel that truth, not abandoning and really recognizing. And I can really resonate with your experience of that questioning as well. It's like getting really...
When she says, I'm trying to see all these things from provision, is she basically just saying like everything that's hard, I'm just trying to have a growth mindset and be like, how could this benefit me?
Yeah, or how could this change? Or how can I... Yeah, totally.
Okay.
How easy is it going to be to be alone every night with a baby? And I assumed that they were all living and sleeping together, but I guess not.
Be clear is if am I abandoning something that I truly want and desire and that is like true for me, or is this bringing me to a threshold where there's
the fact that both of these women have had to wrestle with like, am I abandoning myself in this? And then they like get all this spiritual, rhetoric come in, and then they're like, no, this is fine. This is from God. It's fine.
How much can you be willing to be uncomfortable to allow possibility and the potential, and then moving through that and being like, wow, it actually feels so good and it's so much more liberating, to my being than what I think my ideas of what love or relationship look like. Mm-hmm. And also, again, like our shared mission, like you both have been so supportive and helpful and like celebratory of my unique being, and helped to bring me into a place where I can see that as something of service, and just given me permission to be who I am and to see that that can be a service. And I think that that's another quality of relationship, that like in a true exchange of dynamic, you'll always feel like more empowered and more encouraged to be who you are at the core without changing.
Feels good to be the celebrated unicorn.
Yes, and
Feels
it's great
very
that she
empowering.
can be herself without changing, but she does need to have a child with this guy.
Yeah.
For me, in my unique configuration of desire, I know that in this unique configuration that we have, I will be happy to the day that I die.
Amen.
I know that.
Did Mark just shout amen? Shut up, Mark. Not going to be
Hey.
satisfied. He's gonna
know.
fuck again.
We just talked about like James Fallard's stages of faith the other day, and how like more juvenile thinking and more juvenile spiritual thinking is that like need for certainty. And I'm like, this is just not a particularly like wise line of thought to be like, I know for a fact I will be happy until the day I die in this throuple. It's like, you don't know that. When you married Viana, you thought I'll be happy till the day I die in this Elvis sanctioned monogamous marriage. Like, it's like, have you learned nothing?
You know nothing. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. I like to bone a lot of women. That's my unique configuration.
Amen.
I know that. I just know that to be true. And it doesn't mean that I couldn't have fun in some other situation, but I'm
Different podcast,
fundamentally like I can rest and know, like, no matter what else is going on in the world, like I will be happy to the day that I die, as long as we're happy.
Oh,
And we'll be happy as long as we're all doing the things that ISIS tells me need to be happening.
just like both of these women have just gone on different speeches where they've subtly nodded to the fact that they're worried about self-abandonment. Cuts back to him. He's like, I know I will be happy.
I think that importance for me, there's been so many different cycles of our relationships where there have been big deaths of the life that I imagined for myself, or, what my small self would deem as comfortable. And I've really given the space to grieve those parts of myself. And in one of the more recent ones, with that part that I made contact with, of the part of me that imagines that I could be happy in a just total monogamous relationship, through my unique sacrifice, I grieved that part of me because it deserved that love and honor. Like, really. And in that process, I just hugged myself, and what was coming through was like, I know this isn't what you wanted, but it's what you need.
Tough for me to hear.
Life isn't ever going to turn out always the way that you want, but there's an element of it that can be exactly what you need. And I think for my own
becoming.
I just think that's so depressing. Like, we've just heard from him, like, I'm really happy and I'm going to be happy in this forever. And then her way of dealing with all this is like, I've realized that it's not always about having what you want forever. It's about what you need. There's just like such resignation to me in her that is not in him. He's just like, I'm loving this. I'm going to love this forever. Even if I fuck other people, I'm still going to keep loving this. And if you want to fuck anyone that doesn't help this triangle, well, then you're
out of the
not
field.
allowed.
My own becoming and liberation from my small self's comfortability, that ultimately wasn't driving me. It was driving me towards comfort. As you said, it wasn't driving me towards like this total liberated possibility of so much more beauty and so much more intimacy. And for me, this relationship, and softening and dying over and over and over again, I can feel the part that feels like it's in service to just something that is greater than me. I'm part of it, and I'm an active player within it that is willing it and choosing it and devoting to it. But it also feels like it is something greater than me. That like when I look up at God and I ask our son.
But like, what if it wasn't? Like, how would you choose differently if it wasn't? Because think how many people in high control groups
self-sacrifice because they believe it's for the greater good.
They're like, I'm willing to marry this middle-aged man even though I'm a teenager because I know it's in the service of something greater than me. It's like, but if it's not, what does that say? And that's why like spirituality can be so dangerous. And that's like, well, the reason we like talk about Mormonism and all this stuff all the time is like, you got to challenge that stuff, because it's like, if it's something that you are only doing because of this like mythical idea that it's in the service of something greater that you can't actually name, like what is the something greater? You inspiring people to...
It's the Tao and it hates being named.
It's like, honestly, this podcast, even if this relationship is like completely healthy, which you, to be honest, can't convince me it is, but I do believe they're all consenting. So like, whatever, none of my business. But like, I feel like this is just giving like male manipulators or manipulators generally a lot of language they can use to try and get the same results,
Yeah, but good luck getting to that temple. You got to have VIP access.
It is kind of like that Joseph Smith thing where it's like, even if Mormonism is true and Joseph Smith did something that was fine and God sanctified it, it's like, but it looks exactly like child grooming. So you're kind of indirectly giving others permission to do that.
Yeah, you're following the same blueprint.
Yeah.
That like when I look up at God and I ask our son, like, what do I choose?
Victims of narcissistic abuse aren't always these like weak, just because these women are presenting as like strong and empowered, that's not necessarily where the signs are. And that, like, the signs are in the ways that they're talking about, justifying self-abandonment and self-betrayal and the loss of their own dreams in the name of this dream that he's had for them. When she says our son, is that the baby that they haven't had yet, or
must be the baby they
or
don't
is it
have
Jesus?
Yet.
They have a weird conception.
God, I don't know. I bet it's their unborn
Probably
baby.
their unborn son. What if it's a daughter?
No, and there's no part of me that can be in conflict with that.
Well, a son is the proper heir, and through in vitro they can choose it now, right? Didn't that?
Yeah, the podcast
Elon
bros are all
Musk
doing
did?
in vitro, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, this is an interesting sentence to me.
And there's no part of me that can be in conflict with that, because that's this divine relationship that all of the other details and things, like, they work themselves out as long as you're authentic, as long as you're telling the truth.
I just think it's interesting how she said, no part of me can be in conflict with that. Because it's like, you've described to us parts of you that are in conflict with that, at least one, right? And like, just because you've grieved and hugged that part of you, that part doesn't just stop existing, right?
No.
It's still there. So I just think like even that sentence is so telling to me, like, no part of me can be in conflict with that. Like, I hear that as like, I'm not allowed to go against God. So like, again, it's just all that justification for doing something that you're not like fully on board with.
If this was just a personal exploration.
Shut up, Mark.
Okay, every time Mark speaks, it's like he speaks the truth and then explains why it's not the truth. Like every time, like listen to this.
If this was just a personal exploration of three people trying to maximize their psychological breadth, it'd be okay, but somewhat boring. Sorry. But all three of you are madly devoted to being in service. All three of you are madly devoted to showing up.
Babe, we're not just fucking. We are serving.
And participating in this evolution of love.
Stop it with the evolution of love business.
It's like they are three people who are exploring.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like a relationship of any kind is in service to the greater good if it's like mutually supportive of each other, like showing up in the world as like kind, thoughtful people. I feel like this is requiring a lot of these women, especially the original wife, Viana, it's requiring so much of her bandwidth just to be okay, just to be able to come to the table and like be a part of this throuple in a way that she can like survive in. I'm like, is that helping you be of service? I feel like that's really like kind of taking up a lot of your energy and time, like having to deal with all that.
Yeah.
Having to constantly go do ceremonies to like get in touch with the part of you that doesn't want this, and to, you know, like I can't really say either way whether it's in service, but I just think that's a really grandiose perspective to be like, this throuple is in service to the greater good because we're talking about it on a podcast.
Well, I know when one of my wives starts talking her negativity spells about self-abandon, I drop a God bomb on her. That gets her right real quick.
Okay, last little bit. This is just them saying goodbye.
You open yourself to the mystery of what does love want from me today? You know, and that's service to God. You know, like when you ask that. Here we are.
Impregnating 2 women, that's service to God, Tana.
I love you all individually and collectively, exponentially, maximally, infinitely, to the ends of time.
Everyone, hands in the air. Make this real holy. This moment is holy.
We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
I'm so curious to find out how the impregnation goes.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a whole ceremony for it, if they're doing it that kind of cult
Crazy
style.
twist if he finds out he's infertile. Just like, sorry. It's such a tough one because there's only so much you can tell.
And they're adults, and they have their agency, and they can make decisions for themselves. And, you know, we do all have that Sylvia Plath tree, apricot tree or whatever, blooming in every way and wanting to, you know, see all the ways that life can go, and knowing that to seize one, you'll miss out on the opportunity to seize others. And sounds like they're in their ship and rowing along, and they will until it becomes too painful not to, or it'll just keep going the way that it does.
It'll be interesting when he adds the 4th, how that will make things play out. There's no world where he's happy till he dies with those 2.
It's a
he's
femboy with a
breeder
kink too.
A what?
A femboy with a breeder kink. Like, we will get him pregnant.
So I'm like, do you want to be a dad?
He just wants to be a podcast.
You probably shouldn't be like constantly doing psychedelics when you're entering fatherhood. Not that dads can't do psychedelics, but it just seems that your lives
can do psychedelics
dads
too.
Can do psychedelics
dads
too.
can God bomb on the weekends.
But doesn't it just seem like their lives are like very intense?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, do you really want to bring 2 children into the mix?
They do. Some people really love it.
I'm curious to see if the prophecy of the 2 children will actually play out, because it's like neither of them seem to be pregnant right now.
I wonder how mythic the 2 children's relationships will be. Will they be like siblings in a way, or will they be rivals, or will Esau and Jacob and Rachel and all those other biblical polygamy references get along?
Just like these men that like want to have all these children with different women. I'm like, they never think through like the actual lived reality of fatherhood, or like what type of father they want to be. It's always just like me. I'll be happy in this triangle till I die. It's like, if you're bringing 2 children into the mix, then this throuple is about to like kind of be de-emphasized, in the sense that like the children should be about to become like kind of the most important thing.
But they won't be. The 4th will become the most.
Will be,
That's who will heal
by
the whole
time
world.
that they're like postpartum, he's courting the 4th. I
guarantee it.
And he doesn't know that about himself yet. That's
and
what's so crazy.
Maybe he does.
Maybe he does. I mean, at this point, he's like, well, I've got these 2 women to do this, so like I could probably talk him into a 4th.
Should the time ever come, should Isis ever desire for me to take a 4th, I swear to God, I'm going to be sliding into people's DMs. Like, I know this sounds crazy.
Sound really woo-woo.
But Isis literally told me that we need to have sex. It's not even for me. I'm not self-abandoning. This is like just a universal truth that's like way higher than me. And I'm just simply acknowledging what God wants. I do hope it goes well. I hope that the women get what they really desire. I hope they're able to understand and seek for what they truly desire, and that it brings them joy. Of course, Oscar Wilde said there's people who know what they want to do and those who don't know what they want to do. And the people who know what they want, that's their punishment.
Ooh, yeah.
Because they usually get it.
Join our Patreon if you want to support our channel, help us keep making videos. We've got a giant library of content on there at this point. A lot of lore. It's out some of our funniest stuff.
Perfectly bingeable.
And with that,
adieu. We're off to have a word with Isis.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is probably a long one, so we appreciate you being here.